toolbar, it says participants.
Yeah.
So if you click on that, then you can scroll all the way down through everybody.
Yeah, I see that. So I know who's in now, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fine. 9's enough to look at.
And maybe we should remind everybody to mute your microphones while
Yep, I've got pretty much everyone muted that needs to be muted.
I think the new council should mute as well, because there's always background paper shuffling and stuff.
Yeah, so just know that if you are making background noise, I'll go ahead and mute you. So just before you start speaking, check that you're able to that you're unmuted.
Mute. Am I muted or unmuted?
Why would you not mute it?
Because you don't want them to hear us.
How we doing? We got everybody home?
Mute my audio. You just want to listen to us.
I'm just admitting Sue Ellen and Richard Helm, who is asked to speak under public comments, and we're good.
Okay.
Oh, are you going to mute everybody? Because I noticed a number are not muted.
Yep, I'm doing that. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the opening of the council meeting, and the approval of the agenda and the introduction of the late items. Hope.
So we have a number of late items.
Right.
I'll just summarize them. There's 12 letters regarding the IDLC application for 464 Melmore. That's for the Evergreen property. The draft finalized version of the memorandum of understanding between the Bowen Island Community Foundation and BIM for the Resilience Fund partnership is also included. 2 letters we received regarding the budget, 12 letters regarding the turf field. Those are included in the revised on-table package I just sent a little while ago. And then the collaborative projects staff report regarding neighborhood kiosks that Daniel prepared as a late item. And then just some additional information provided by the Eagle Cliff Community Association, diagrams and some just additional information for council.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So is there any errors or omissions? Not errors, omissions that anybody can think of?
Amazing. Did you use your manure?
Yeah, she did all the garden beds are all. Lucky, please don't.
Sorry, got that muted.
Yeah, okay, no worries. Okay, approval of the agenda. I can't see everybody there, Sue Ellen, thank you. In a second, Rob, I got you, thank you. And all in favor? Thank you, yeah, almost perfect. And so we're gonna move right into public comments. Hope, what have you got?
So we have 2 public comments that were submitted, and just so everyone knows, we asked that individuals email myself, the corporate officer, before 6:15 p.m. Just indicating that they wanted to speak under public comments, just so I could keep a running list. We only have 2. Doug Nash was not able to be present for this, or virtually present for this meeting, so he asked that I read out his correspondence that he sent, and I will just do that now. So it's dated Monday, April 13th, and it's public comment regarding the turf field. This is hello to Mayor and Council with respect. I have tried to engage the interest and support of the Mayor and Council by submitting information regarding the problems with artificial turf fields and offering mitigation solutions and some alternatives to this type of playing field. And I have even written to specific councillors whom I felt would be supportive of my position, but I have not received one response. I have asked direct questions of Shauna Jennings regarding the scope of the project, but again, I have had not a response. So I decided to ask the Bowen Island Everything Else Facebook group what they thought. As you may well imagine, I got a response. My unscientific poll was 74 to 13 against going ahead with the project. I think that speaks volumes, and I humbly ask you to reconsider artificial turf field project entirely. It may well be a great playing surface, but it is an environmental abomination. If the project does go ahead, I will survive and move on. The planet, not so much. Back to you. It also includes the information from the poll, which I won't read out. The other public comment request was from Richard Helm, so I'll just unmute him now. Richard, we have 15 minutes allocated for total for public comments, but we'd just like you to keep it as brief as possible. You can go ahead. Nope.
While we're waiting, if I can just note that this is the first time that we've been offering, doing public comments, that we've found a way, thank you, Hope, for the public to participate in council meetings.
I seem to have lost Richard somewhere. So Richard, if you're
You
here,
spoke too soon,
please,
Maureen.
please
Not Maureen,
join us.
Sue Ellen.
It looks like he's left the meeting, so perhaps he'll come back under the question
Okay,
here.
I got it, Aaron.
There we go.
Oh, Ian, we can hear you. I'm just gonna mute you. I think it's safe to proceed.
Okay. We'll take that as the public comments in. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything in there that they'd like to pull at this time?
Yes, please, Gary. I'd like to pull 3.2.
3.2, Allison, okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to pull 3.3.
3.3, sorry. So,
3.3, yes,
Okay.
please, that's Sue Ellen.
yeah. And those will probably go into section 10 or,
Gary, can I just suggest that item 3.3 go after item 5.1? Just they're both development variance permits.
yes.
And they're somewhat related, and Daniel can speak to both of them at the one time.
All right.
Yeah, okay. 3.3, that's Sue Ellen. Okay, thanks, Hope. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
All right. And the recommendation of council approve the items as outlined on the April 14th, 2020 consent agenda as amended. Second, thank you, Rob. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So we're moving on to the delegations, and I'm glad to see Steve Mitchell's smiling face in there. Thank you very much, Steve, for coming out. As people may or may not be aware, Steve came and briefed the council a while ago, so.
Dave
Sorry?
Mitchell.
Oh, sorry, Dave Mitchell, yeah. Geez, where did I get that, Steve? Not getting much sleep these days. Anyway, yeah, thanks very much. And so Dave, we'll just let you go ahead here with the talk about the court service review for the fire department. Very.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to discuss our report with you. I regret that it could not be in person, but I've had the pleasure of speaking with several of you in the past number of months and look forward to renewing acquaintances at some time in the future. And note that we will continue to receive feedback on the report and to work with Bowen Island as required to clarify any further issues. Now you have the report in front of you that has been circulated. And so I would first of all like to tell you a little bit about us and our team's experience with these types of matters, and then review and discuss a number of salient points, following which I'd be pleased to take any questions. So first of all, as a group of consultants, we are a BC company established in September of 2000 to provide advice to public safety, principally to fire departments in BC and in Western Canada, but have worked as far east as Toronto with their fire department and in the north. We also work at times with police and ambulance services and 911 systems in many jurisdictions. So me, first of all, April 1966 to the present, I first worked with the Vancouver Fire Department for 32 years, and then 2 years, 1998 to 2000 with ECOM. And I was the director of operations, the founding director of operations as the building was opened, and we went live in June of 1999. And I stayed one further year to August of 2000 and formed the company that we have today. We also provide consulting services in addition to emergency fire departments, principally to the Union of BC Municipalities, the province of BC. We work with Emergency Management BC and the Office of the Fire Commissioner. As well, we continue to provide consulting services to ECOM. Another of our consultants that worked on your project, he wasn't on the ground there, but Gordon Anderson recently retired as BC's Fire Commissioner. And he began his career as a police officer in Victoria, then with the Esquimalt Fire as deputy chief. As fire commissioner, he developed the first and second editions of the playbook, plus he managed much of the interface fire response to 2017 and 2018, as well as the flood response in 2017. Gordon Anderson was not on site with us, but he provided valuable background insight into the regulatory issues, principally the provincial ones, and the playbook, as well as managing the benchmark survey portion of the report. Greg Betts didn't appear on scene either. He's a retired CAO with various local governments and regional districts, both in the Lower Mainland and in the Okanagan. And in these roles, he has directly managed a number of volunteer fire departments similar to Bowen Island, and he contributed greatly to the discussion around the transition from the improvement district to become a municipal service and the way forward in terms of strategic planning. Jim Cook was on the ground quite a bit with us. He's retired as the fire chief from West Vancouver. Previously, he was deputy chief in New Westminster, and he's also instructed at the Justice Institute and worked with us on many projects with municipal and regional district fire departments. Jim was on site as we met with the department and as we surveyed the island. Wayne Humphrey also on site with us, retired as the Chief Training Officer for Vancouver Fire Rescue. And he now specializes in firefighter training and fire officer training throughout BC, as well as Alberta and Manitoba. And Wayne has worked with our company since 2010 on many fire service reviews throughout the province. And with his own company, he's previously trained some members of the Bowen Island Department. Wayne also participated with the on-site meetings with the members and municipal staff. Wayne, along with Jim, provided the fire operations and training perspective based on their extensive experience. This is not wine, by the way. Finally, Ian McDonald, who also met on site and reviewed issues with us, is a retired lawyer. He practiced in Canada and the United Kingdom until 2004 when he returned to BC and began to work with our group. And his specialty is all of the regulatory matters, including WorkSafe, the Fire Safety Act, issues related to fire inspections, the fire underwriters, and the playbook. He was on site and met with municipal administration. I think he'll be continuing to work with Hope on some drafting of the bylaws to come. Now, our process, we met initially with the mayor, members of council, and the previous CAO in September at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention to discuss the availability for a core services review at some point in the future. That developed quite quickly, as you know, and this particular type of project is one, the core service review that we've conducted many, many times for departments of this size, as well as smaller ones, up to and including some of the largest in BC and elsewhere. Starting in November, we met several times with members of the department on a number of practice nights. We also met them at their regular work sites and the fire halls since the very beginning of the project. We also met informally with them one-on-one on many of our visits, and we've been available to any of them at any time if they wanted to talk. We've also spoken quite often in person, by phone and email with Bowen Island staff to obtain documents and to discuss various issues, and reviewed all of the available data. The acting CAO and all other members of the municipality were always available, very helpful, and I want particularly to thank Dennis, Raj, and Hope. We could not have done this without their very professional help. As well, we traveled the length and breadth of the island to be sure that we understood the geography and the physical challenges to providing the service in terms of how some houses were sited. These included, and not an exhaustive list, but we were in the northeast portion to the west limit of Smuggler's Cove Road, to the northwest to Grafton Bay, Barton Road, Galbraith Bay. We also traveled as far up Mount Gardner as the road permitted. Southwest to King Edward Bay and Tunstall Bay and Arbutus Bay, immediately south of the Cove to Cliff Road and Valhalla Place. And in all of these places, we considered the approach to the various properties as well as the availability of water supplies. It also has to be said that throughout this process, everyone we met with, without exception, have been very professional and positive and contributed in a material way to our ability to complete this project. Your firefighters are passionate about their commitment to the residents and the property owners and appear to us to be embracing the changes. The acting fire chief and the two previous fire chiefs participated with most of the meetings and were always positive, supported this review, and provided a great deal of encouragement to all the rest of the members. Now, to talk about the key issues. The report identifies a number of key issues for Bowen Island in terms of your fire department. And to start, I want to assure you that these are the issues being faced by all fire services in BC. They are extensive, they're complex, and they become more complex even as time passes because the work is complex. But every fire department in BC is dealing with these issues. From the perspective of someone who's just approaching 54 years in the fire service, this Saturday actually is my anniversary, I have to say that the provision of fire services is increasingly complex. It is more dangerous for firefighters and it is more highly regulated. It is increasingly risky as fires burn hotter and they burn more quickly. They are also dangerous in terms of any number of carcinogens and fire smoke. All of this has led to firefighters having presumptive coverage for an increasing number of cancers, as well as for heart disease and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, the requirements for firefighter training were once very simply stated by the minister's order in 2002. George Abbott was the minister, as, quote, all NFPA standards, unquote. Today, they are very much more complex and are prescribed by the Office of the Fire Commissioner's Playbook. This is discussed in detail in the report. As well, there is more demand for additional types of responses, and the overall numbers of these are increasing as well. And you can see in the report, the call volume for your department continues to go up. They're responding more often than ever, and this will only continue to increase. Your fire department is the one all hazards emergency service that you directly control. And for an island community, that service is very broad. Now, we discussed bylaws, and for a fire department, its powers are defined and limited by the establishment of operational bylaws. They can do nothing more than what they're allowed to in the bylaw. And for Bowen Island, these need to be updated. The current bylaw was inherited from the previous improvement district and should be revised to include a regular system of inspections, which are required by law, and to complete the changes pending to the Fire Safety Act. The operational side of the bylaw should specify all of the services the department provides and may also consider what services it will not provide. There are 4 recommendations about that. Now, the playbook. There's a very thorough discussion in the report about the playbook and the mandatory requirements for the authority having jurisdiction, in this case, the council, to declare one of 3 levels of service and then to ensure that all specified and required training requirements are met. These include the need for clear lesson plans. They include the need for individual assessments and training records to include all of these elements. And all of these must be available for all. Now, the need for a firm definition of the minimum training requirements for the BC Fire Service came from the coroner's inquiry into the death of a volunteer firefighter, Chad Shapansky, in Clearwater in 2004, where at the end of the day, they deemed he was not trained. There were no training records, and he died in a building that was going to be torn down. It was tragic beyond words, and it resulted in a lot of changes in the fire service, including specifying the training requirements. Now, the requirements, including the job performance requirements, are extensive, and we have provided these for you in an appendix in the report. These requirements are what are termed the ladder progression based on specific requirements from NFPA 220, which is building construction, 921, which is fire and gas explosions, 1001, firefighter, 1021, fire officer, 1041, fire service instructor, 1407, rapid intervention, 1500, occupational health and safety, and 1584, rehabilitation. Now, exterior requires the least number of these, but they are still quite extensive. And so if you follow it through in the appendix, you will see pages and pages of job performance requirements. Now, we've reviewed these in a great deal of detail with the acting fire chief, and he has uncovered a significant number of training records for members of the department. This was somewhat was cloudy at one point in time, but he's worked very hard with the members to find them. Some of the prior training, however, may be more informal, or the records cannot all be located. And so we have proposed what are called prior learning assessments to clarify a baseline for all members of the department. Such prior learning assessments are done regularly in the BC Fire Service, and following these, the baseline for each individual can then be used to develop a training plan to address any identified gaps to ensure that the service level set by council can be met. This is one of the areas in which we've recommended a level of administrative support to ensure that all of the required documentation is completed and updated in a timely manner and backed up offsite to protect both the firefighters and to protect the municipality. The thorough documentation of this information is mandatory. There are 10 specific recommendations related to training, and training is probably the highest set of priorities you have before you. Now, the fire underwriters, there is an extensive discussion about the role of the fire underwriters as well in establishing guidelines for fire insurance coverage. Bowen Island has been reviewed twice by the underwriters, first in 2007 and again in 2013. They addressed the need for an operational fire hall for the south and southwest portion of Bowen Island, as well as the need for fire safety inspections. The underwriters also spelled out the replacement schedule for the fire apparatus that they have and pointed to a future need for an aerial ladder truck for properties in the Cove area. WorkSafe, we had a detailed discussion about WorkSafe, and the requirements of this are found in the Workers' Compensation Act and the Occupational Health and Safety Regulations, as well as in other regulations and policies of WorkSafe. The municipality is very aware of these, and we've made a number of recommendations, and all of these recommendations are already well underway, as are many of the recommendations in the report. I have to say again that the municipality and the department have really engaged with these things and are working their way through them. The Fire Safety Act is a complete replacement for the Legacy Fire Services Act. The Fire Safety Act was passed in the legislature in 2016, but still requires the publication of regulations, and these are anticipated this year. What the Fire Safety Act will do, among other things, is change the requirements for fire safety inspections and fire investigations, but to this point, they have not yet been formally stated. We've discussed this with municipal staff, and they're very aware of the need of the bylaw redrafting process to complete and to contemplate these new requirements, which are the law. They replaced the Fire Services Act, which also had a requirement for mandatory inspections. To fire hall response. Now, the department is now responding from both fire halls as contemplated by the fire underwriters as one of the requirements for fire insurance coverage. The fire hall on Adams Road provides very good coverage for all of the south and southwest portion of the island, and relocation of the hall on Grafton Road to Miller Road will provide coverage within an 8-kilometer travel distance to the north and the northwest portion of the island. It will also improve coverage and response in the Cove area, and this is another positive initiative that has occurred during the period that we've been working with the department, and we commend the chief and his staff for this. The apparatus model that we are recommending to you really is based on ensuring compliance with the fire underwriters and to meet the wide diversity of properties, water services, and the physical geography. To do this, we're recommending that each of the fire halls has a rated engine, which is an underwriter's term, a quick response mini pump, a fast, quicker attack, smaller crew, get to the scene quicker, as well as a tender to ensure water supply. The existing single rescue unit would continue to respond from Hall 1 at its current location and at Miller Road at the time that hall is built. The need for distributed assets is there given that depending on your measurement points, the distance by road is greater than 18 kilometers end to end. So place on Fairweather Road to Smuggler's Cove Road is a long distance. So you need to have distributed equipment to meet that. We conducted a benchmark survey to review how reasonably similar fire departments operate and how they're funded. And it's standard practice for all the fire service reviews that we do and provides general guidance. It's not black letter law that you have to do everything that everybody else does, but it provides a benchmark so we can understand where your department stands compared to others. For the purpose of this review, we tried to choose fire departments similar to Bowen Island in the sense of being an island, either actually or figuratively, in the sense that your fire department can only rely on your own staff and apparatus. So the benchmarks were Pender and Gabriola, plus Grand Forks, Invermere, Mackenzie, and Gibson's. Not all of them perfect, but what we really wanted to do was look at departments that pretty much had to stand on their own. Was a discussion about some of the smaller Gulf islands like Main Island, also interesting, but their population very much smaller, and so they didn't really provide a good benchmark for us. When we looked at the benchmark survey in terms of firefighters per unit of population, you're about at the average. In terms of training, the budget was above average for the group, but was significantly underspent. Inspections, and note that these are required. The average number of inspections for the group is 184. Bowen Island at the moment is 0. But once again, the acting chief and the municipal staff are very aware of this issue, and we will assist them with models for bylaws developed for other areas to ensure compliance. In terms of operating budgets per capita, Bowen Island is $101. The median is $135 per capita. The average is $160 per capita. Emergency program, you have a good emergency program and you're to be commended for that. It's now being managed by the emergency program coordinator, and we did not have any particular comment or recommendations, as I don't think there were any required. However, the importance of this program and its staff and budget has only been heightened in the past 8 weeks in the response to COVID-19. The province of BC has made a series of declarations that underline the urgency that we all face and the power that flows from the Emergency Program Act. As well, you may be aware that the province is developing a complete rewrite of the Emergency Program Act for legislation in the fall sitting. They've announced this will out a complete approach for all governments adopting what is called the Sendai model and underlining the critical nature of our emergency response system. In terms of strategic planning, we talk about this in the report, and the discussion in the report stems from the residual transitional activities from when the improvement district operated the fire department. Going forward, we have recommended the department and the municipality discuss and consider a 5-year strategic plan to discuss current and emerging trends and be linked to capital and operational budget planning. And we would be pleased to assist you with this if you wished. In summary, in our review, we've identified a number of issues and provided 36 specific recommendations, but as well, we provided guidance to the municipality and the department on a whole series of other issues, and I'm pleased to report that a number of these issues are already being addressed. We are satisfied, our group, that the administration of Bowen Island and the acting fire chief and his firefighters are well seized of these issues. They understand their importance and priorities. As I noted when I started, these issues are being addressed one way or another by all municipal fire departments in the province, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Staff? I guess you answered all our questions the last time, Dave. Anybody? All right.
I'll have one.
There we go. There's Sue Ellen.
Yeah, I think Rob wants to ask a question too.
You go first.
Okay, I was just interested in the, thank you. I mean, I've read your report carefully and we've spoken before, and I'm really appreciative of this report, which points a clear way forward, which I'm delighted to have, and especially in these times. So my question was more about the COVID-19 provincial declarations, and you were saying the Emergency Program Act rewrite coming this fall from the province. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What can we expect that would affect the fire department?
It's a very good question, Councillor. Thank you so much for it. The rewrite of the Emergency Program Act was announced last October at the Emergency Program Conference that's held every year in Vancouver, and I think your Emergency Program Coordinator attends that. And it was announced by the Deputy Minister, Laurie Halls, who said it will be a complete rewrite. And the need for it really came from the 2017 Fire and Flood Report. And you may recall this review was done by George Abbott, who was a retired provincial politician, and Chief Maureen Chapman. And so they looked at the fire and flood response in 2017. Obviously, there was things that could have been done better, and some of those were repeated again in 2018. So their report said there were gaps in how emergency services were provided, and many of them that were in the interior, but in other places as well. And it was because there wasn't a holistic, agreed approach at the beginning. We always tell the story that go to a fire, you don't pull up at the front and pull out a whiteboard and form a focus group and figure what you're going to do. You got to know what you're going to do. The rules have got to be in place ahead of time. So I think what the province is proposing is the Sendai model, and Sendai if you want to Google it. Sendai is a city in Japan where a UN conference was hosted. And what it said is, if we're going to do this well, we have to ensure that all levels of government, and in BC in particular, this also means First Nations, they all have to be part of the picture, and they aren't currently. Now, I think the government is preoccupied at the moment with COVID, and I still hope that the draft of the regulations will be in front of the House in September. They have already taken public comment, and the comment and the initial commentary by the provinces is available on the website. But I'm pleased to say, someone who's been doing this 54 years as of next Saturday, this is a much better vision for how we're going to manage emergencies. And it's not just fires and floods, it's COVID-19. It's cybersecurity, or it can be any one of a number of things that we would have to stand up a provincial organization for. So, Councillor, it's a good question. I know your professional staff will be quite involved with it. I certainly will, and look forward to keeping everybody in the loop. But in this last 6 to 8 weeks, I think we've understood many things, that the province has many more powers perhaps than we assumed they did. We've also, if I may just say as well, we are seeing the most wonderful display of leadership by Dr. Bonnie Henry. I just think that that whole leadership model that she is portraying has been wonderful. It's calm, it's professional, but it's reminding us that we're all in this. And so I think that's one of the outcomes of the provincial legislation to come. And it's a good thing, Councillor. Thank you for the question.
Thank you for the context. That's great.
Rob?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dave. And, you know, we've had this conversation a couple of times, so I really appreciate you coming on again. You know, just to dovetail on Sue Ellen, really good overall look at our fire services, which I really appreciate, because there's been a lot of different reports, different things. I mean, one of the things that I really liked hearing the most, that you have very high confidence in our firefighters. And I was really happy to hear that, because I think it really starts with from that staffing level and then moving up from there. So that gives us a good base to work from. I'm going to ask you a question, and it may be a bit of an unfair one, but it's been always percolating in the back of my head. I'm going to throw it out to you, and you deal with it how you. I'd be curious to hear what your answer is to to somebody who's having to dole out, just make the money decisions. Because I mean, you read the report, and you know there's a lot of money involved in the report, and you know we don't have a lot of money, so that's a bit of a concern. And I look at this much more. Actually, you brought it up in your opening. You know, we run an all hazard services, so we do many things. We do fire, but you know we also do anaphylactic shock. You know, pulling people out of cars. I think our risk and hazards report said 2 structure fires a year. I think it was more. I think it was around 5 or 6, but let's do that. But almost 200 call outs a year. So vast majority of our volunteers are being called out for non-fire service related calls. And now we have the pandemic added on top of this, which shows that, well, there's potentially even more for our men and women to need to deal with. Then when I look at sort of the report, but also where our general funding goes, and it's very, very, it's fire, basically. And I guess one of my concerns is, because for me, it doesn't matter if somebody gets injured or killed in a fire or a hurricane or a pandemic, it's all the same to me. I just want to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck to keep people safe. And you know what my question is going to be, how do we ensure that we have money for these other risks that we need to be dealing with, especially moving into the future? If it's right now very much heavily going to fire services, and the report calls for quite a bit more money in the fire services. So just, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say.
I can't, and I shouldn't speak to Bowen Island, but I live in Coquitlam, and we had an insurance rating because the fire department is there. And if we didn't have a fire department, my fire insurance costs would be a lot more than they currently are. And so I think it's kind of thinking about this as a business case, Councillor, because that's a very good question. By providing a fire department, you get a discounted rate on your fire insurance. And so I'm just only going to talk about Coquitlam. I cannot speak about Bowen Island, but any place that has a fire department, there is a reduction in the cost of fire insurance, which in our experience, it is many times more than the cost of the fire department. did a project a couple of years ago in the interior in Armstrong and Spalumcheen. And so there was a question about whether people were within the coverage of the fire hall or not. And it's a joint council, well, two separate councils there, but together they own one fire department. So we were talking about this, and so we said, well, who lives where? And so one councillor put his hand up and he said, I live within the 8K. Oh, what was your fire insurance? And it was like $800 or $900 a year. And the other guy on the council said, well, I live just outside and my fire insurance is $2,400 a year. So having a fire department or not saved that amount of money. And so in Coquitlam here, I know what it costs for my fire department. It costs less than my insurance would be if I didn't have a fire department. So if I can answer the question that way and not step on the issues for Bowen Island, but that's the way I would think about it, Councillor. It's a very good question.
Yeah, just thanks for that answer, David. And I mean, that's what I got out of the report. A lot of it's driven by insurance policies, which, I mean, it's unfortunate because I'm looking at, you know, for me, it's much more about where the needs are, right? But I get it. I get how that goes. And it'll be a challenge for us when maybe we get legislation coming down the road where the government's going to tell us, hey, you need to provide pandemic, you know, responses, and where we're going to have to pull that money from. And I guess that's a challenge we'll just have to deal with moving forward. So, okay, thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody else? Yeah, I'm looking around out there. Oh, Maureen, thank you. Maureen?
Yeah. And when we last spoke, Dave, I had asked you about what PLAR meant, prior learning assessment. And I think that that might be useful for the public to hear, given that one of the concerns that had prompted the core service review was the lack of documentation of the training level of our firefighters. So if the two solutions to that are to provide some administrative support to make sure that the training levels are documented, and then the second was PLAR. So could you explain how that works, please?
So I didn't hear you all that clearly. Did you ask about prior learning assessments?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. It's like any other certification, if you think about it, and it just will require somebody that has the competence to assess your folks. We've already talked about it with the chief and the deputy. In fact, Wayne Humphrey's company does this a lot throughout departments in BC, and it doesn't actually have to take a whole long time, but they come in, they run through a series of drills and tests with the members of the department, and they can then certify that they have the competence for the particular requirement, any one of those job performance requirements in the appendix. If not, then they know specifically for Dave. Dave still needs to do a little bit more of this, and this, and then he will be considered competent. So, Councillor, it's a good question. These things are done. Most fire departments in BC, small and medium-sized ones, have needed to do these at one point in time to determine where they were vis-a-vis the requirements for the playbook. And so it's not something awful and wicked that's happened just to Bowen Island. This is something that's done quite regularly throughout the province, is done professionally by any number of people. And it provides you that baseline, like any other baseline is provided, to know where you are and then what's the gap to where you need to go, if I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, we have a motion here just for a release date. You can hear this. If council, the recommendation is that council receive for information the Bowen Island Fire Department Core Services Review Report included in the April 14th, 2020 regular council agenda, and that council directs staff to prepare a priority-based action plan to report back to council. I'll move that. Wait a second. Okay, Sue, all right. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? All right, how's that look, Hope? We all in?
Yep, that looks unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much. It is unanimous. And on that, thanks again, Dave. I really appreciate the work you and your team did to help us out on Bowen Island here. We've got a solid base to work forward on. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. I know you're not going to run away right away and say you'd be around for a year or so to help us when we start implementing some of these recommendations. So again, thank you for all your help, Dave. Really
I've said earlier, and it's not a tongue-in-cheek comment, we do provide a warranty, and we would be pleased to come and meet with you. Perhaps when you get back to in-person meeting to do your strategic planning, I'd be happy to come and help that, discuss it, facilitate it with you. We won't go away. We're committed to ensuring that the chief and the deputy and the members can continue to make forward progress to council's satisfaction.
lovely. Much appreciated, Dave. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye, Dave. Thank
Cheers.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay.
So Mayor Ander, we were gonna go back to public comments, just, Richard Helm didn't have an opportunity to speak.
But he's here now.
That's acceptable by council?
I'm certainly okay with it. Anybody have a problem with that? Richard's here now.
Good with me.
Okay.
Okay, Richard, you're up.
I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just 1 second. I was dealing with Bowen Island internet here, which created a bit of an issue for me. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Sorry, I just want to close this other computer. There we go. I was on the Queen of Capilano a few months back when one of the active proponents for this TUP approached me to discuss the possibility of IDLC moving into Evergreen Hall. And he described it as a long shot. In my opinion, council and planning staff should not be pushing so hard against neighbors in a residential community to force through a long shot. I feel the planning staff has been biased in favor of this proposal, and I don't think it should be this way. These are good people working hard, but in my opinion, they worked much harder to find reasons to advance this proposal than to support the interests of the nearby affected neighbor, which does not feel good to me. If TUPs are going to be used in residential areas in the future, then they should have very substantial, if not unanimous support from immediate neighbors before they're even considered by council. And absolute accountability to meet well-defined thresholds in case they are passed. If council receives 9, let alone 39 letters from nearby and next door neighbors opposed to a TUP, then they should spare the municipal resources and the community angst and stop it right there. Our OCP speaks to places for education and schooling, and IDLC should focus its energy on developing a solution within those zones, as IPS, the Children's Center, Youth Center, and Montessori have done. There is no shortcut or backdoor to a solution. And IDLC is not a tiny school, similar in size to IPS when it was at City Hall, with room to grow in the older age group, as some of their marketing materials from last year suggests. We want all youth-related programs to be successful, and zoning has been very mindfully created in the OCP for this purpose. There are ways of creating a suitable space within a suitably zoned area, but it takes hard work, as the other schools have found. I am open to change within the neighborhood and even right next door at Evergreen Hall. But that change needs to be driven by the property owners working proactively with the nearby neighbors to determine what change is good for the neighbors, rather than testing what impositions they can tolerate. We're looking for win-wins here. Many of the people who have written in opposition to this proposal have lived in Deep Bay for decades, and they have seen one or both of the OCPs be created and participated in many of the public meetings. We know that change will come and welcome it in some ways, but we must also be able to take comfort in knowing that we have good protection by the OCP for the core values to maintain the character of our residential neighborhood. And any change to zoning will come only after substantial public hearings where the councillors will hear concerns directly from the neighbors. There must be a higher bar than pushing through a TUP in order to impose such a substantial change on a residential neighborhood. And I close with this. Council requested yet more time to see if proponents and the opponents could come to solutions regarding neighborhood impact. The answer is no. There is no way that this use of Evergreen Hall will be accepted by the most affected local residents, whether it be via TUP or a rezoning application. I urge council to defeat the TUP and DVP and to use great caution in creating the proposed OCP amendment and with any residential TUPs in the future. I thank you for your attention.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Richard. All right, so we're gonna move on to business arising from the minutes, which is 5.1, temporary use permit TUP 02-2020 and development variance permit application DVP 03-2020, 464 Melmore. And on to Daniel Martin. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I won't go into a big presentation of this application. I believe council is aware of the application, and we discussed it at a previous council meeting that was deferred to this date. The most significant change in the report, other than the additional letters that we have received and received on the on-table item as well, is the section under the other implications section of the report, which discusses the Local Government Act requirement for designating a temporary use permit area. And then the note that following a legal review, staff agree with a letter we received that our OCP does not properly designate areas for temporary use permit where temporary use permits may be issued. So accordingly, staff recommend that council direct staff to prepare an OCP amendment bylaw to amend our OCP to include that designation. So based on that, staff are recommending that this be deferred until a future consideration, or we have in the alternative that council reject the temporary use permit and still make the motion for it to direct staff to prepare an amendment bylaw to the official community plan.
All right, that's it, Daniel?
Yeah.
If they were to go to the route of the change in the OCP and stuff, how long a process is that?
We would advance it. I mean, there's requirements for doing an OCP amendment in terms of early and ongoing consultation that council deems appropriate. So we would look to bring an initial report to council with a potential timeline.
Okay, thank you. My comments are that, yeah, I'm glad this was brought to our attention, and we're certainly going to fix that up as far as the TUP is concerned, or ongoing. I appreciate the heads up on that one. At the last meeting, we've had 2 meetings on this already. At the last meeting, they would bounce back and forth many times, and I sent the 2 groups away, seeing if they could come together and form that committee, because that was going to be one of the parts of the organization going forward. I guess they were unable to come to terms with that. So that's my position right now. Daniel, go ahead.
Sure, I was just going to add, so the applicant at their neighborhood information meeting that they held prior to the last consideration had asked for people to volunteer to sit on that neighborhood liaison group.
Correct. And
they had received some neighbors of Deep Bay interested in forming it, and they were looking to form that group. And they've held off in part when I informed them of our change of our recommendation that it be deferred. They held off to wait to see for council's consideration of that. And then immediately following the meeting last time, when it was asked to go away to spend more time in consultation, the applicants did do some work on that initially, and then they hit sort of COVID reaction and had trouble trying to think of how best to engage, given they couldn't do face-to-face meetings or do another neighborhood meeting.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else have a comment, Rob?
Bob? Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Daniel, for that. I guess one of my challenges is right now is that there's division in the community. I don't think the right way to go is for this just to die on its own through technicality. I do want to see some of that work being done so we can know what's happening in the community and know that there has been effort made for the two sides to see if there is something that they can do and work together. And I know with this COVID ID, it's been difficult to do that, but I would like to see that happen. I think leaving it at this stage, I mean, if we need to do this work on the TUP, let's get it done. We need to do that for our TUPs going forward anyway. So I think we should clear up that language and get that work done hopefully as quickly as possible. But at the same time, I also would like to see even if you have any discussion between these groups. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I don't think that there has been that thorough work done. And there seems to be a lot of sort of two camps fighting against one another instead of people coming together and having a bit of a deeper discussion. And I don't see any reason why that can't happen as we try to get this TUP in the issue in order. So Daniel, is there anything that staff can do to help facilitate that? Or do you have any experience of us having done that in the past?
I mean, I guess short answer is yes, there could be more work done with the neighbors and the applicant. I think I would want to see sort of council direction on this application and see what the move is. I mean, I know, so some of the letters we've received from neighbors, you know, are opposed to the temporary use process as opposed to the rezoning, whereas I think other neighbors are more opposed to the school use, regardless of it is a temporary use or is a rezoning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it, Rob?
Sue Ellen has her hand up, Gary.
Yeah,
I'm
thinking I'll let Sue Ellen go.
Okay, Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to take a slightly different tack on this, but it's similar to the one I took last time. I recognize that Dr. Dave Whitty has sent in a letter with his professional opinion as a contribution to the Bowen Island community. I respect what he's got to say. He was the chair of the OCP steering committee that produced our current OCP, and I was on that committee. When the Bowen Island planner stepped down, at that time we only had one that was doing this kind of work. Dave Whitty stepped into the planner role and I became the chair of the steering committee. This was the steering committee for the public process that led to our current official community plan. And I disagree with the idea that it's a technicality or that it needs to be, you know, Gary, as you said, fix that up. I don't think that it's that the temporary use permits being not defined as to where they can happen on the island, I don't think that's an error. I will note that in the 12 fundamental, I think it's a reflection of the process, the really good process and deep process that went into making our official community plan. The dominant themes were things like, from the community, were things like the green oasis, the preserve and protect the good things we have going now in the community, and affordable housing was the other dominant community theme. And I'll point to the 12 fundamental goals. One of them is to establish a land use pattern which places a high priority on environmental and social factors. And then temporary use permits are really defined. I'm on 310 here, objective 98. There's a page about temporary use permits, and it does say give consideration to temporary use permits for short-term or seasonal uses. I'm not sure that this is one of those. And policy 235 says the municipality may consider temporary use permits provided the use is short-term or seasonal in nature and will not create an unacceptable negative impact upon the natural environment or the character of a neighborhood. Permits shall be issued in accordance with the Local Government Act. So, and then there's two more that follow about loading, dumping, barging, and adoption, how to adopt it. And so I just, I think that the nature of the official community plan is solid. and it was done with lots of public input from all over the island. I think it does speak to how a temporary use permit can be used. And I think I would like to recommend that we reject the TUP, as much as I'm in favor of education. I'm in favor of alternative schools and alternatives for learning on Bowen Island. I just don't think that using a temporary use permit for a change of this type that is not contemplated in the official community plan, I think is the wrong process to take. And I had two other things I just want to put out there for what it's worth. We have had a school use in a neighborhood, and that's the, it may not even be happening anymore, I don't know, but the former CNIB has been functioning as a sort of like a school for a while anyway. I don't know if it still is. And that is another one maybe that at some point should be addressed. I think they've got a rezoning application in. And also just now with COVID-19 upon us, I don't know that regular schedules and school schedules and distributed learning, all these things, learning online, all these, different types of learning. I'm not saying that this is that IDLC does learning online. I think all of those things are a little bit up in the air right now. And I don't know if this is the best time to be making a decision like this when everything is sort of changing. Anyway, that's my reasoning, and I won't be voting in favor of the first one, but I will vote to reject a TUP.
Maureen, David, anything? Or Michael, I saw your hand up. Go ahead, Michael.
Actually, I'm first.
Yeah, Maureen, after you, happily.
I'm having real trouble following the argument here. We have a couple of resolutions in front of us. I'd like to suggest that we sever and take the first clause and see where that lands, the revision to the proposed amendment to the OCP, see where it lands, and then take the second batch and make a decision as to whether we are going to issue a TUP, which I think is highly unlikely, or to reject it, or to refer it. And just get the vote over with, because all of the elaboration here is not clarifying matters. So if it's all right with the rest of you, I again would like to sever the resolutions.
Okay, we'll put it out as two resolutions. Michael?
Would you like me to read the resolution or the recommendation?
Please.
Yeah.
That
Which
Councillor, the first part that Councillor Nicholson recommended to be severed. That council directs staff to prepare an amendment bylaw to the official community plan designating the areas where temporary use permits may be allowed.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
So that was Councillor Nicholson and Councillor Morse.
Okay, any further discussion on this one? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
No, just a minute. Ellen's waving.
Sorry?
Sorry, I'm opposed.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay. And, okay, now anybody further discussion? Michael or Maureen?
Well, if I may, I agree with Maureen. So perhaps could we ask Hope to read out the second part, please?
Bear with me while I change screens. So the second part of the motion is that council defer consideration of temporary use permit TUP 02-2020 for school use for 464 Melmore Road, legally described as Lot 20, Block 6, District Lot 490, Plan 11393, PID 009079211.
Okay, if I may, Gary, the only thing is, this is deferring it I quite frankly would rather see it rejected. I'm very anxious that both parties, the school and the local people in the neighborhood, get clarity and direction from this meeting. At the end of at the last meeting, we heard the arguments for and against. We asked the people if they would, of their own violation, get together to see if they could find some common ground. COVID aside, it is quite painfully obvious that there is no common ground. And what I'm really concerned is at the end of this council meeting, the school and the local, the people in the neighborhood who are opposed are left with a decision deferred. I so hope we can provide clarity as a council so the school can get on with what it has to do and the local residents opposed have clarity on the situation and it's gone away. Please let us not protract this for yet another council meeting using that term deferred. Can we not provide clear direction?
Okay, thank you, Michael. Allison?
I think that motion there was the motion from staff. If somebody wants a different motion on the table that the temporary use permit be denied, then they're fully rightfully can make that motion.
Well, that is the motion from staff, yeah.
The motion is in the package, but if I'm hearing other counselors, some counselors suggesting that they want a motion on the table that says the temporary use permit be denied, so those counselors should make that motion.
May I just speak directly to that point?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Allison, if it should be not be considered rather than denied.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know. I don't know the technical. They've applied and we are considering it. We've had several meetings and debated it, so I'm not sure what the technical term is.
I think the wording used in Daniel's report is reject.
Yeah, he's got that in his alternatives at the bottom.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, Maureen, you had a different wording that you used just a couple of minutes ago. Can you reread that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Well, you said you wanted them split, which is what we did, and then you had the first one, which we just went through, and then you had a second motion where you said to defer or to reject, or you had 3 points that you brought up, not just reject.
Yeah, whether we're issuing, which I don't think we can do in the circumstances, or defer or reject, but whatever the motion should be clear.
Well, what would the motion?
Sorry, Rob?
Rob?
Can that not be the motion then?
And that's what it is.
As it stands, council can either insert the words reject or defer.
That's correct. Very simple.
So those are the two options that are outlined in the staff report.
So if you look at point number 2 at the very end of Daniel's report, the first half of that is that council reject consideration of top 022020 and DVP 0320 2020.
Okay.
I am afraid.
So maybe we can do the staff one first and then do another one.
Done the staff one.
The staff one is to defer.
No.
So you either defer or we reject. There's 2 choices of motions.
No, the one we just passed was that council directs staff to prepare an amendment bylaw to the.
Yeah, I'm talking about point 2. The next point is, what do we do with a temporary use permit? Are we going to defer consideration or are we going to reject consideration? They're 2 different motions. Somebody needs to make one of them.
I thought we were going to make one. I would like to make the first one. The council reject temporary use permit TUP 02-2020 for 464 Melmore Road, legally described as Lot 20, Block 6, District Lot 490, Plan 11393, PID 00907921.
I will second that.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
What was the first part of that? I missed the first few
The
words.
council reject consideration.
Thank you.
Well, reject temporary use permit.
That's been moved and seconded.
Garrett,
Rob,
And then me there.
Rob,
okay, just a process question. Would it not make more sense to first reject or pass the staff one, which is to defer, and then
No.
your motion on to reject it at the end?
No.
No.
That just clutters up the
Why?
map.
well,
Well, we're still gonna, okay. Because then we won't be voting on the staff motion afterwards, right?
No, we
Staff
won't.
has given us an alternative.
If
Yeah.
you read the staff report, they gave us quite a choice.
we're working
The
on
reject
the
was the
first
choice.
choice. It's on the table. I'm asking for any further discussion. David Hall,
Barry, I'd like to speak on this.
please.
I guess I'm reluctantly going to have to support rejecting this. I support the idea of the school. I thought Dave Whitty's note was interesting and thoughtful, and I felt that it aligned with the official community plan. This is a public school. It's a distributed learning system for our students. It serves a significant number of Bowen students, and at a time of distributed learning is particularly going to be important in a COVID environment. So I was really quite distressed that the public couldn't get support of this. It's the exact neighbors that I'm most interested in. The claims that this would be a traffic disaster and so on, I just didn't think held any credibility whatsoever. I would hardly change the lives for anybody in that neighborhood except for the people who are, right next door. Some of those people support it, some of them oppose it. Unfortunately, it seems that we can't get agreement on that, and so I guess I'm going to have to agree that this should be rejected. But it is, I'm not happy to do that at all.
Okay, thank you, David. Rob? Rob?
Yeah, I mean, similar to David. I guess for me, I think the school would be fine in that area. I'm not living there, but I think it falls with what we're trying to do in the Cove, and we're reducing traffic. Kids can walk to school. I think the group has done a really good job putting forward mitigating measures to deal with some of the issues. I'm frustrated that there hasn't been a good, robust, and honest conversation. It's been battle right from the start. And that's what I would like to see that conversation happen. I know that's going to be difficult in this time. That's why I'm personally probably going to vote to defer it, not to reject it outright, because I do think it's a good mix for the community there. And, just saying, no, we don't want it, period. That's not a great rationale to reject this outright. I would like to see a bit more work being done on this. So that's why I'm going to vote to defer.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And just, Allison, go ahead.
A process question, Daniel. Once we have rejected a temporary use permit, if the vote was to reject, can they reapply?
You can go for a variance too.
To reapply for a temporary use permit, I think there's a provision in the Local Government Act about reapplying. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think you have to wait 6 months before you reapply, unless I think it's 2/3 of council agrees to accept an application.
I guess I think based on some of the letters we've had recently, since the agenda went out, the designation of areas for the temporary use permit is maybe not going to be quite as simple a process, that there will be a fair amount of public input into that. So that's going to be a 6-month process probably.
Yeah, whatever. Okay, just, have you got me there, Hope?
Yeah, we have the motion on the table that's been moved and seconded.
Yeah, okay. No, I just wanted to say that it's with a very heavy heart that I will vote the way I am. As unfortunately, there's a blockade here that is not going to change. And we as council are responsible to try to make this better and heal the wounds in the community. It just can't go on like that. Like I say, I do it with extremely heavy heart, and I'm very disappointed. And I will call for the vote. All in favor? All in favor?
Could you hold on, Gary?
Yeah.
Hope, can you read the motion so that everybody hears what we're voting on, please?
Absolutely. That council reject consideration of temporary use permit TUP 02-2020 for school use for 464 Melmore Road, legally described as Lot 20, Block 6, District Lot 490, Plan 11393, PID 009079211. That was moved by Mayor Ander and seconded by Councillor Kale.
All right. I'll ask the question. All in favor?
That I see Councillor Morris, Nicholson, Kale, Ander
Green. Yeah.
in favor.
Fast.
Who else?
Sue Ellen Fast is in favor.
I
Okay.
don't see you, Sue Ellen.
David?
Oh, there you are. Good.
No. Okay. And Michael?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And opposed? Okay. David? And Rob? Okay. Thank you.
So that motion was carried.
Thank you. Okay.
Your Worship, it's a bit of a technicality, but there's a third part to it. The DVP should just, it could have been included in the last motion, but it wasn't. So I think you should pass a further motion just to reject the DVP application as well.
Well, that's correct.
Dennis, I was gonna suggest that as well.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the second motion would be
Third
that
motion.
council reject consideration of development variance permit DVP 03-2020 for variance of parking requirements for 464 Melmore Road, legally described as Lot 20, Block 6, District Lot 490, Plan 11393, PID 009079211.
I'll move that. It's Gary. Second. Thank you.
Councillor Kale.
All in favor? Okay. All in favor? Okay. 1, 2.
Can you say the first few words again? Sorry, that council.
The council reject consideration of development variance permit DVP.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
That's for the parking. Have you got the count there?
So that's Councillor Wynan and Hawking opposed.
That's correct. Thank you. And
Motion is carried.
passes. Yep, thank you. Okay, now we're gonna move on.
So the item 3.3 removed from the consent agenda will be next.
Yeah, okay, Sue Ellen? That's over to
Yeah.
you.
This is
I'm going to recuse myself from
Okay, thank you, Maureen.
Right.
Sorry, Maureen, can you just state for the record why? Oh, you're muted. Sorry.
the applicant is my landlady.
Oh.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll speak to this just briefly. It's item 3.3 is earlier in the agenda. I pulled it from the consent. This is partly just for people that might be following along. And this was for another temporary use permit. Also proposed to be used in place of or as a placeholder for future rezoning. And I just wanted to pull it out because I object in principle to a temporary use permit being used in this way when its use is defined in the OCP. We don't know that what'll be the result of that rezoning or whether it will be a short process. And I just, what I read from the OCP earlier, I just stand by that, and I don't think it should be used in this way. I think we should just get on with the rezoning.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's an invitation for people to apply for temporary use permits when they decide they don't want to live in their home-based business anymore. And I think Bowen's land use bylaw and official community plan and our way of living on the island is based around home-based businesses where the owner lives on the property and works from their home. And that's one of the principles of the OCP, and that's what's not happening here. So I think it just goes straight to rezoning.
Could you read that recommendation, please?
You want me to make a motion?
Yes,
You
Okay.
can read it if you'd like, Sue Ellen.
Excuse me, can we continue with the speaking list? Isn't the recommendation on the table or not?
Oh, no, not on the table yet.
Yeah.
Putting it on the table.
So
Would you like me to read it?
I think that might be a good idea.
Sure.
The council defer consideration of temporary use permit TUP 02 2019 for general services as a primary use for 1034 Miller Road, legally described as Lot 8, Plan VAP 7806, Block 1, District Lot 490, at the April 14th meeting of council until an amendment bylaw to the official community plan designating areas where temporary use permits may be allowed has been adopted.
And
And I recognize that council did move to do that, and that passed. I wasn't sure that it would pass, so that's partly why I pulled it.
It did not pass, Sue Ellen. It was been removed from the consent agenda. The motion is now on the floor. It just needs a mover and a seconder.
I'll
move that motion.
Sorry, I meant the earlier motion had passed.
Okay. That's been moved and seconded.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, 3, who else have you got there? I got Allison, Rob.
I believe that's everyone.
Except me.
Except for Sue Ellen. Thank you.
I'm opposed.
In opposition, the motion is passed.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay,
Maureen can come back.
yes.
I will. How do I?
Email her.
Let me just send her a quick email.
Oh, she's here.
Oh, okay.
Have to
Well,
unmute her.
I just like to suggest while we have Daniel here and actually Judy McLeod has joined the meeting as well, if we could deal with item 3.2, the development variance permit for the Grafton Lake Phase 1 subdivision.
Okay,
Okay, I pulled that and am I muted? And the reason I pulled it for a couple of reasons. One is I wanted to clarify, and Judy did clarify for me today. When I was reading it, I thought part of the application to reduce the road surface would also be reducing the amount of the road right-of-way dedication. Now, my understanding is that that is not a consideration. The road right-of-way amount dedicated will be the standard normal amount. The variance will be for the paved and finished surface within that road allowance. So I wonder, in case anybody else was wondering about that. And my other reasons for pulling it was to do with the burying of the hydro lines. I would think, because I just want to raise the question and to be considered or thought about burying the hydro lines. The water treatment plant is a very important part of our infrastructure, and by putting the hydro lines underground, you are adding more safeguards that the power will not go out to that plant. So I'm not sure whether I want to grant that variance. I wanted to raise that. And the other was to make absolutely sure that that road is wide enough for the paved surface for 2 big trucks to pass one another. We don't want to have some sort of an emergency and not have fire trucks be able to get in there, or repair trucks or whatever. And if there's any thought that we would ever need that surface widened in the future, then it should be being built to that standard now, so that the applicant's paying for it, not us as a municipality. So those were the comments I wanted to make. Other than that, I'm not opposing us reading the notice.
okay. Does anybody have any further comments on that? And who's gonna read the notice now? It's a long one.
I can read it if you'd like.
Thanks, Hope.
Let me just find it. Okay, here we go. The notice be given that council will be considering the issuance of development variance permit DVP 02 2020 for variances to table C15 and schedule C5, section 9.1 of Bowen Island subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 447/2017 for regulations relating to construction of new road N on properties legally described as North Half Block 5, District Lot 1347, Plan 2230, PID 010715452, south half of Block 5, District Lot 1347, Plan 2230, PID 013966391, and Lot A, Block 1, District Lot 137, Plan 2230, PID 008637245 at the May 11th, 2020 meeting of Council. The Council authorized staff to give notice for the consideration of issuance of Development Variance Permit DVP 02-2020 in accordance with Section 499 of Local Government Act to all properties within 100 meters of the legal boundary of the properties legally described as North Half Block 5, District Lot 1347, Plan 2230, PID 010715452, South half of Block 5, District Lot 1347, Plan 2230, PID 013966391, and Lot A, Block 1, District Lot 1347, Plan 2230, PID 008637245. Sorry, I got a little fast at the end there.
Yeah, I can understand. Okay, thank you very much, Hope. I'll move that. Do we have a second?
Second.
David?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, if I could just respond to Allison's point. In the financial implications section in the report, Allison, it talks about the there being a cost sharing agreement in place. So if we did end up looking at the installation of underground hydro service, there would be, those costs would be shared with the municipality, not covered by the proponent. So this would have financial implications for the municipality.
Thank you. I missed that. Can we get a copy of the cost sharing agreement, please?
Probably. Okay, I'll ask the question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous.
Aye.
Is that just about? Is that them all, Hope?
Yes, that was carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So I think we're down to the bylaws. And 6.1, 2020 to 2024, 5-year financial plan bylaw, number 508-2020, revised. And that goes to Raj Hare, Chief Financial Officer. It's all yours, Raj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the initially proposed financial plan that went through public consultation and review with the Finance Advisory Committee received on March the 30th. It called for an overall municipal property tax increase of $411,000 in operating expenditures, which was the equivalent to a 7.6% tax rate increase. To take into consideration the impact and hardship of COVID-19 is having on our community, the financial plan has been revised. The revised financial plan reflects a $155,000 reduction in expenditures, which is so it takes down the tax rate increase from 7.6%, which was proposed initially, to 4.7%. The reduction in expenditures has been achieved by eliminating the CPI index-based increase of 2.2% to council and staff salaries for 2020, by removing the 2020 introductory provision for funding for council strategic initiatives, and by eliminating vacant positions in our budget, which total the equivalent of 1 FTE. So we'll see a reduction of 1 FTE in our FTE complement. In terms of impact to the average assessed property, which is assessed at $1,087,000. So before the revision, the initial 7.6% tax rate increase translated to $179 increase to the average property. After the revision, the revised plan will result in $111 increase. So we've effectively reduced the tax increase by $68 to the property assessed at the average assessed property on Bowen Island, which represents about a 40% reduction. With those changes in mind, staff are recommending that council rescind the third reading of bylaw 508, cited as the Bowen Island Municipality 2020 5-year financial plan bylaw, and that bylaw 508 2020 essentially, as attached to the report that you have in front of you, be amended by replacing the distribution ratio schedule on page 3 of the bylaw and replacing Schedule A to the bylaw, and that the bylaw 2025 year financial plan 508 be reread a third time and as amended and finally be adopted.
All right, thank you, Raj. Any questions? I don't see anybody, I don't think.
I have one. I have one, Mayor.
Yep.
I just wanted to ask the question about the Islands Trust has also made a similar adjustment, or it will, sorry, it hasn't yet. There was a meeting of the Financial Planning Committee today, and so there will be a reduction coming from the Islands Trust, the Bowen portion of that as well. So it should be a savings of around $9,000 if I'm remembering correctly the report that I looked at this morning. And so I just wanted to make sure that Raj, you're aware of that, and ask how that will be if we pass this finally tonight, and then the Islands Trust makes that change, how will that get rolled in?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor, essentially that is an other taxing authority, so that change will impact the tax rate bylaw. They requisition and we turn their requisition into a tax rate. So the Chief Financial Officer from Islands Trust did contact me today to let me know that change was coming. And so that'll be reflected in the tax rate bylaw, which will come forward to council at the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you.
Otherwise, I'm in support of this. I just wanted to bring up that little detail.
Thanks, Colin.
Good.
I got Allison first, and then Michael,
And then Maureen.
and then Maureen. Thank you.
I'm pleased to see that there has been a reduction in the amount of taxes or dollars we're going to need to collect. But I still have several concerns about the underlying budget itself and the reserve contributions and so forth. So I still cannot support this financial plan.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Michael?
Okay, Gary, I have to be honest with you. There's a lot about this financial plan that makes me extremely apprehensive. And if I may, let me start at the beginning. We have indeed reduced 7.6, that huge sticker shock, to 4.7. And we've reduced the contribution for the average Bowen house from $179 to $111, which maybe doesn't sound so much, but a council can do what it can do. However, the one point that will be made by many is that it wasn't so very long, for all the best reasons, and certainly one I support, that we went into a 7-year contract to establish a parcel tax for our garbage collection. And the irony is that for the garbage collection, that is an additional $179, the exact same amount that was contemplated had we increased by 7.6%. So we have, in fact, through the parcel tax, which we were all party to, myself most certainly included, put a tax increase over and above of 7.6%. So if you take that 7.6% and the 4.7 we now anticipate, the results of the two decisions that council have taken quite recently actually amount to a total of 12.3%. Because you may say one is the parcel tax, you might say one is the budget. People are saying when they hold up this piece of paper, which is the annual property tax, the figure at the bottom will reflect both. So really, we've inflicted a our decision-making has inflicted a 12.3% increase. I'm also really concerned on some of the areas of capital spending. At times like this, and I've been immersed in this as probably as some of the other councillors for the last 2 months, capital spending comes with enormous risks. On the community centre, we've already spent $880,000. On the fire hall and emergency services hall, we've spent $250,000. There is a total $1,130,000. We have over and above a multi-use path, which is something which needs an urgent review because there are some very considerable dollars there, and I think some certainties for certain, many things uncertain. So the capital expenditure, which is a potential wrecking ball in this time, is out there and making me even further uncomfortable. The Financial Advisory Board has a great concern, expressed a great concern over our 5-year forecast. Our property tax levy shows a $1 million increase over the next 5 years. If we pass this budget, we will be one of the few enterprises that actually passes a budget where this year hasn't been significantly downgraded or reviewed as a platform for the following 4 years. Sadly, I think what this does is it fails those people who are in business of one type or another, are having to rewrite their forecasts for this year, rewrite their budgets, in fact, set their budgets aside, because as no one knows what's happening year 1, years 2 to 5 are about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. And the only purpose for having them is simply to fill in the numbers that would otherwise appear vacant. On top of this, if you're failing the businesses, what about people's homes, the families, who are certainly not looking to any type of increase of the type that we've suggested, which right now makes me so uncomfortable. It's not that I doubt the integrity of the thinking that went behind it. I just think it's been overtaken by events, whether it's reserves or frankly showing a crass lack of empathy for those people whom the last thing they need is any form of increase more than they can bear at this moment. It's just awful timing. So I don't say it to slam the work that was honestly done. I simply state that this budget has been overtaken by events, and I, for one, will not be supporting it.
All right, thanks, Michael. Any other comments? Rob?
No, Maureen and then Rob, sorry.
Maureen?
Oh, Maureen, you're muted.
Sorry. I will be supporting the budget, which is not to say that I don't appreciate the points that Councillor Kale has made. But I have some questions that were sort of practical questions that I've been asked and have been hearing in the news. And I don't know if any of you have answers to these questions, but I want to get them out there. So there has been discussion of potential expansion of the deferral program to all property tax owners. And my understanding is at this point, the province has not confirmed that. Is that correct, Raj?
Yes, that is. So there's an working group, intergovernmental working group that's made a couple of priority recommendations to the province. And with respect to the deferment program, which is currently, it covers seniors that are aged 55 or older, or surviving spouses of any age, or persons with disabilities and families with children. They're asking that that program be expanded to cover all of class 1, which is a residential class, and asking that it also be extended to cover class 6, which is business, and class 8, which is nonprofit properties. In addition, the interworking group has also recommended to the province to standardize due dates for all remittances to other taxing authorities. So that's for the provincial school tax, TransLink, Metro Vancouver, BC Assessment, and the Municipal Finance Authority, and for the regional district as well.
And
So that would set the number of days. They're proposing that the number of days be set after a specified period where the municipal general purpose tax levy is due, so that local governments can extend the due date for property tax submission if needed without needing to remit taxes to the other taxing authorities out of pocket prior to collection.
Okay. And do we have any idea on when there might be a decision on that? Probably not. No.
I'm hoping in the coming days or coming weeks, because that decision will have to be reflected on tax bills. And right now, I mean, the tax due date is actually legislated by the provincial government, as is the penalty. So other municipalities are in the same boat as us. So any action outside of that, we would be acting outside of the legislation and outside of the power that we have.
So we would not have the power, for example, to do an installment plan?
Currently, it's not that we don't have the power. We do also. What do you mean by an installment plan? Are you saying that people pay their... See, other municipalities have installment plans in place where they anticipate what their taxes for the year will be, and they make a monthly installment to the municipality. There's quite a bit of administration involved with that, and we currently don't have the manpower to conduct that administration. However, we do allow people to make monthly installments through their online banking, and that does happen. So nobody is precluded from not being able to make installments. And there are a number of people who make monthly installments and then pay the balance of taxes owing at before the tax due date.
So you're saying people would pay their taxes in advance of the property tax?
That's what an installment program is it's actually people are paying on a monthly basis in advance.
Okay. So
in terms of, I think if you're referring to paying installments after the due date,
yes,
they could, but they would have to pay a penalty. We do not have the authority to actually write off taxes. We have to go to the minister for a special ministerial order to reverse a penalty or to write off any taxes that apply.
Okay, so what you're telling me, Raj, is that the decisions around deferrals and installments and waiving of penalties are all within the provincial government's purview?
That's correct.
Do we have any options to provide relief?
By exempting the penalty, there is an option. It's not really relief. So we're under the general municipal tax scheme, which essentially, without having a bylaw, you actually all municipalities are under that, and municipalities can adopt an alternative tax scheme. And what that allows you to do is vary your due date from the municipal scheme. But when you, again, there's quite a bit of administrative burden in that, because then the electors have the option of choosing to either abide by the alternative scheme or to pay by the municipal scheme. And we have to keep track of that, and they have to elect, and they can switch from election of doing so. But we have to pass a bylaw to do that. And then we have to put into place administrative practices to be able to monitor that. We currently don't have that in place.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this, Rob? Rob?
Yeah, I just want to comment on a couple things Councillor Kale said. First off, this is an operating budget. This is not a capital budget. The capital decisions we're going to be making as they come forward. Some are further than the pipe, like the community center and the cross island pathways. Some other ones are coming up, and we haven't gotten completely into them yet, but we will be. And I think we'll see afterwards what's gonna happen after. We don't know. Maybe the federal government will come out with a bunch of stimulus money. I'm not willing to throw any of these projects under the bus right now, and we're not even voting on that today. We're voting on an operating budget, not a capital budget. So I just want to clarify that. The other thing is, and this is just a bit of a point in order, is we all voted for the parcel tax. I didn't vote for the parcel tax, so that I voted against that. So I just want to make that clear. That wasn't a unanimous vote. So that's all I wanted to say.
Rod?
I'd just like to correct, actually, when we're voting on the budget, the financial plan bylaw incorporates both the capital budget and the operating budget. So there is in the financial plan bylaw Schedule A a line for capital expenditures, and it accumulates all of the capital projects in that line for utilities and for the general fund. So I just wanted to clarify that we are voting on both the capital and operating budget, or they're both included in the financial plan bylaw, sorry.
And then, okay.
But we don't have any money committed to those at this point in time. Do we?
Yeah.
You got $13 million in the last line in your budget committed to capital.
Just 13?
That's for year one, 15 million
That's
in year two.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna read the recommendation and we'll see where we go with it. The recommendation 1 is that council rescind third reading on bylaw number 508/2020, cited as the Bowen Island Municipality 2020 5-year financial plan bylaw number 508/2020. Number 2, the bylaw 508/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipality 2020 5-year financial plan bylaw number 508/2020, as attached to the report from the Chief Financial Officer dated April 7th, 2020, be amended by replacing the distribution ratio schedule on page 3 of the bylaw, and B, replacing Schedule A to the bylaw. And number 3, the bylaw number 508/2020, cited as Bowen Island Municipal 2020 5-year financial plan bylaw number 508/2020, be read a third time and as amended, and finally adopted. And I'll move that.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and opposed? Allison and Michael, I'm sure, in opposition. Okay, thank you, and the motion passes. All right, staff reports. The Bowen Island Housing Needs Report. Daniel Martin, Manager, Planning and Development. Thanks, Daniel.
So thank you, Mayor. So we have with us in this meeting, we have our consultant, Sophie Payne from Urbanics, who has prepared the Bowen Island Housing Needs Report for us. And so she's prepared to present to you all on the report that's in your agenda.
Okay.
So I'll pass it off to Sophie.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Can you all hear me all right?
Sure can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And this will be the presentation. This is my first time being so technologically advanced. So
doing great
job. Hopefully you can tell me if this is all working. Okay. So you see on your screen Bowen Island Municipality, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm Sophie Payne. I'm with Urbanics Consultants, and I'm one of the consultants that worked on this report, and hopefully I can answer any questions you may have. The Bowen Island Municipality has obviously witnessed a growth in population over the last decade, And this growth has been accompanied by a variety of housing issues. And our study is a comprehensive review of such concerns, and we identify appropriate strategies for addressing them. So essentially, we let data build the foundation of the report, and input from stakeholders and residents help shape the final analysis. We identified the largest housing gaps and developed an action plan for the municipality to consider in order to address these housing challenges. And I'm going to be talking about our high-level findings and recommendations here. And then I'll take questions at the end of the presentation, if that's all right. And I'm aiming to take about 15 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. So just to start out, the background for the study was, so as far as the data, it was obtained from a variety of public and private sector sources, as well as from field work that we did on the island by between November 2019 and March 2020. And we also used a number of forecasts and assumptions regarding the state of economy, and we used these assumptions throughout the report. And we recommend that the study findings be re-examined within 5 or 10 years, especially considering that recent events may undermine some of the information that we used and the assumptions that we used. And just a background of some of the information that we used in the study. The housing continuum is a good place to start as far as what we looked at for Bowen Island. The housing continuum here, can you guys hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay. The housing continuum here shows the range of housing possible in a community. Generally from least to most secure, on the far left, we see homeless. On the far right, we see market home ownership. And then from Bowen Island residents who are homeless or at risk of homelessness, to residents buying their first homes, Urbanic looked at the entire range of housing to provide a comprehensive analysis of housing for many different kinds of households and individuals. So a background in some of the terms would be non-market housing, which is essentially any housing protected from market forces and offering affordable rents or ownership and perpetuity. Some examples of that might be supportive housing, housing cooperatives, or senior housing, which is particularly relevant because the aging population is expected to grow significantly over the next several years. So also senior housing is expected to grow. We also looked at the other end where market housing comes in, and there's a wide range of options for renters and owners in market housing. So there's small lot, single dwelling homes, there's duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, apartments. There's even, designs of pocket neighborhoods and lots of different things you can do with market housing. And so we also explored all the possible housing barriers that residents could come up against, such as low income, insecure tenure, a mental or physical illness, neurodivergence, medical or aging needs, and much more. So we explored housing barriers that residents face on the island, and we were able to work with vulnerable populations to uncover some of these challenges. And some of the key Bowen stats here, this is a simple snapshot of some of the demographic data that we have compiled in the report. And here it already shows the vast majority of the island's population is going to have a very difficult time buying the largest, well, it's the most common housing type, which is single family dwelling. 90% of the housing stock is single family dwelling. And then we also see the median sales price is almost $1 million. So we're seeing right out of the gate what the study is going to be telling us. And here are some of the at a glance, some of the most consequential gaps that we found and that we believe to be within the purview of the municipality. Here we list some of our housing projections using trends of the last 25 years. We know the approximate number of new households that will be coming to the island, both renter and owner. We also found that 84% of residents cannot afford to buy a new home, and single family dwelling, which is 90% of the housing stock. And then another gap we found was the fastest growing population cohort is 65 and over, and they will be the majority of householders in 2031, but a lot of the housing typology does not meet their needs. And we also were looking at the high risk of homelessness for renters and the number of people in housing insecure settings. And it is cause for some alarm, as we did find a lot of housing insecure households on Bowen Island. And there is also a relatively low percentage of non-market homes, which means that this could be a possible way to address these affordability challenges in the future. Some of our findings were that we found very low vacancy rates and very insecure tenure for renters. We found that we found to the extent to which renters find it difficult to enter into the owner's housing market. And we also found that local retail jobs are held mainly by renters. So that's an interesting relationship that we delve into in the report. And we also found that no median income household can afford a market rate home. And there is a lack of housing diversity, as well as we found support through our field work for development, particularly of non-market housing, and particularly in the Snug Cove area. And then through our interviews, meetings, and surveys with residents, we overwhelmingly found an extremely tight rental market with insecure tenure. And we found particularly one-parent households are particularly stressed as they need bedrooms for their children, particularly if the children are of different genders, and they're constantly concerned about whether they will be able to stay in a place that is suitable, even if they can find it. Here we're seeing that since 2006 to 2016, there has been an increase in vacant housing. This is determined by looking at how many dwellings are temporarily occupied or unoccupied. And the rate of 22% in Bowen Island is much higher than Greater Vancouver. And residents have reported this to be being one reason why rent is higher and tenure is insecure. So landlords can, according to our interviews, landlords often make more during short-term rentals, driving up the rent for long-term rentals as far as the competition between the two. And also as a result, residents have found that they're often forced to move before the start of the season, leading to the insecure tenure that kept coming up. We also found really high unaffordability for all types of housing. So we found that the most affordable type for row houses and townhouses is still at 76%. 76% of households cannot meet that median sales price given their income. And then for renter occupied, we have the percentages on the far right indicate what percentage cannot afford those rentals. So we have 50% of residents not able to afford a 3-bedroom, 46% a 2-bedroom, and almost 1/3 not able to afford a 1-bedroom. And this is probably one of the more jarring tables that we created, because this is showing the median household income for certain types of households. And the highest earning family is the couple with children family. But no one can actually afford, comfortably afford any of the market rate housing. And this is based on 30% of families' income or households' income or more is considered unaffordable. And moving into the rental market, the results show that rentals are much more affordable to households throughout the spectrum. Median families and couples could afford to rent housing in all sizes of rentals. But again, lone parent families and median renters face higher barriers, with both being unable to afford 2-bedroom apartments. This is significant because as lone parents, depending on the number of children, it would be unsuitable if there were not enough bedrooms. So the analysis shows that 1-person households could not afford any type of rental on Bowen Island. The median 1-person household may even have difficulty renting a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate, as they would be spending approximately 28% of their income to split a 2-bedroom. 28% is almost 30. So it's very close to being unaffordable at that point. And so getting into how the economy and housing are very intricately intertwined on Bowen Island. The retail trade is disproportionately renters, and affordable and secure rental housing is crucial to maintaining a labor force on the island. So the local workforce is overwhelmingly made up of renters, and the business owners find it difficult to attract and keep employees, and it's clear that the local economy hinges on the rental market available for current or potential employees. So even business owners on the island are struggling to stay afloat due to certain rental housing. So affordable and secure rental housing is crucial in maintaining a labor force on the island, especially considering all businesses on the island hire less than 100 employees. So in this scenario, every employee makes a difference. Every employee makes a sizable impact to the overall profitability of the business. And just to reiterate this point, nearly 2/3 of renters work on Bowen Island, while 2/3 of owners commute off the island for work. So renters live and work on the island at a much higher rate than owners, and business owners find it difficult to attract and keep employees.
I think we might have lost you.
The last findings is the, hello?
I think we just missed.
I think we missed the last part you said, Sophie. Sorry, Swill.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, great. Could you tell me what point you lost me?
You're muted, Hope.
The end of the last slide.
It's the end of the last slide.
This one.
Sorry.
I think it was this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, just reiterating the point that business owners are finding it difficult to attract and keep employees due to the uncertain rental market. And looking at one of the last points, the lack of housing diversity is evident when looking at the housing permits. Not only the housing stock makes it clear that 90% of the housing is single family dwelling, but it doesn't seem to appear that there is much diversity, although in the last year, we did see the first fourplex approved in 2019. And then we also have co-housing, but co-housing is the only apartment style type housing to be constructed during our study period here. And we were also told by certain stakeholders that processing times for new types of housing appears to be slower with this municipality. And then, you know, this is kind of the fast intro to the housing action plan. It's a very detailed and organized action plan for the municipality. And the 5 main objectives that we found were addressing the market rate housing needs, enhancing the supply of rental housing, addressing housing affordability, preparing for the anticipated growth in population age 65 years and over, and addressing non-market housing needs. And there are strategies assigned to each objective, and we categorize each strategy by the priority or Bannock saw the most pertinent to the challenges at hand with the resources we perceive to be available to the municipality. And I think that in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. And if you have any questions or comments you may want to give us, I'd be really happy to hear it. I'm going to bring you all back up on my screen now too. And I think I'll keep the presentation up in case you want to go back or anything.
Okay. It's Sue Ellen here, Gary. I have a question.
Yeah. Hi, Sue. Sue Ellen.
Through the chair, Gary, may I speak? I can't hear you. You're muted, Gary.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good, Gary.
Okay, thank you.
May I speak?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Sue Ellen, yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you for this report. It's too bad that it doesn't tell us any surprises that we I should speak for myself. I'm sorry that it doesn't tell me things that I had kind of guessed at or that we'd heard other ways through the community. So you're confirming things that I thought of, and I'm wondering just as a question things I thought I understood, you've confirmed. The Housing Action Plan highlights the 5 things at the end there. I'm wondering if you, with the COVID-19, you mentioned right at the beginning that the pandemic might undermine some of your recommendations. Do you have any thoughts on that? Can you give us any priorities out of those 5 at the moment, or have you got any comment?
Yeah, so of course, I don't know. No one really knows what will happen as a result. At this point, it doesn't change anything. Any effects that happen, let's say it'll be years from now, the long-term effects from the pandemic. So we recommend that housing needs get reassessed every 5 years anyway. So I think that would be sufficient to understand. But this is kind of taking a whirlwind to everything that anyone thought was going to happen. But what's good is that, well, not good, but what does remain true is that the housing gaps are there no matter what. Yeah. And the recommendations would only really need to be changed depending on the resources that the municipality has.
Gotcha.
All right.
Reassess after 5 years, COVID-19 or no COVID-19. Gotcha.
Right.
Thank you.
Anybody else out there?
David has got his hand up, and Rob.
Okay, David, Rob, Allison, thank you.
Okay, I'll start. So thank you very much for this. As Sue Ellen says, it's data that confirms a lot of information that we've been hearing and that we've been assuming, but this really helps us a huge amount. That obviously, renters live and work on the island. We don't have any places for them, and we know that the seniors population will be growing as a percentage of our community, and we don't have the right types of homes for them. So those are just some of the highlights. But thank you very much for this, and I just want to ask Daniel, our planner. Daniel, I'd like this to go to our Metro Vancouver, the response to the EOI, as an appendix to the submission. Can that be done, please, Daniel?
Yes, so I did actually include it with the. So I just received the draft report right at the deadline for the EOI, and worked with Sophie to make sure we got it and did include it with our EOI response.
Great, thanks, Daniel. That really helped a whole lot. So thank you very much for this. It was really useful information, and I certainly support the motion to refer it out to our housing group. Thank you very good.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, Rob? Rob?
Can't hear you.
No.
Okay. Sophie, on the short-term rentals, you can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, Sophie. So on the short-term rentals, I'm just curious the impact that that is having on Ireland relative to other municipalities. I don't know if you're able to give us an idea around that, or if you assess that.
Yes.
And also how you assess the impact of short-term rentals on rent costs.
So the exact impact is not possible to discern, but we can say, based on case studies in similar communities, that short-term rentals do drive up the price of long-term rentals because it creates a competition between short-term and long-term tenants. And I'm not sure if you call the long-term, the people that stay in the long term are not considered tenants, but there is a competition that drives up the market price. So the extent of which there's no formula, but we do know that the high percentage of short-term rentals that we can deduce, we can't even really get the actual number. We can just deduce that percentage that we showed you earlier. But that is higher than any of the communities that we've done thus far, or that I've done in the last year and a half. And this is also the most acute affordability issue I've seen as well. So there is a correlation, but I couldn't tell you the exact formula for it.
Okay, Sophie, you mentioned that the issue of people living in a rental and then being basically kicked out during the summer season and then coming back in, which I find really troublesome because it doesn't create stable rental. Did you find that, were there a lot of cases like that on Bowen Island?
I would say every renter I talked to, and it appeared a lot in the surveys too, that that if someone didn't experience it, they were afraid of experiencing it. So I think it's an issue that most renters deal with.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Allison? Allison?
So I'm here, had to unmute myself. I was also making myself a note about another question that just came up from that one. The the slide that had unoccupied on it.
Sure, I can go back to that one too.
So I'm just wanting to clarify and understand what you're labeling as unoccupied, and I'm assuming it's the difference between the total number of dwellings less total dwellings ordinarily inhabited.
Yes, so that's how we came up with this, exactly.
Okay, so those dwellings are not unoccupied. We have a very large seasonal population of people that own properties here, and they come on weekends and they come all summer, and you know, they may come for weeks at a time in the winter as well.
Yeah, so that's definitely a part of it.
Quote, unoccupied in my mind. They're what I would call part-time residents.
Yes, yes. So there's definitely a large number of part-time residents as well.
And so that number that you have labeled as unoccupied is not all available for long-term rent.
Yes, sorry, I should have clarified temporarily occupied or unoccupied. So there's a possibility for either. So temporarily occupied is including the part-time residents. Sorry if I didn't clarify that.
Well, yeah, but you've only put the unoccupied number in rather than trying to split it into two. So there's setting up a false hope there that there's 200 units that could all of a sudden be long-term rentals. There's probably maybe 50.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't split them. We can only determine that these are the dwellings that are not habitually occupied. So that number does include temporary occupied and occupied dwellings. And that's the number we have to work off of, but that's a really good point.
we have some surveys we've done of property owners, and so we do have some data on people that own property but are part-time residents.
Yes.
So-
I think if
And
I
then
could
my-
add to that, I think Sophie's using the categories and the figures from the census.
Yes, I know, we've already clarified that. It's the difference between the number of dwellings in the census and the number of dwellings ordinarily occupied. So the other thing is, you're using terms such as townhouse, apartment, row house. Are you, when you're talking about townhouses and row, you're referring to Belterra, I think, the co-housing development as apartments. I would never have called those apartments.
Apartment style.
Well, they're condos, they're townhouses. They're all ground level, one entry, one unit units.
All wrong. Yes, that's true. They came through here
BC
as buildings. So, and also, let's see here. It's interesting that you mentioned that because we have about 5% of the housing stock apartment or condo, and less than 2% row housing according to the census.
Yeah.
So that should be updated as well, but that's what the census counted.
Yeah, well, I guess it's the terminology, and I guess we've got definitions for things in our land use bylaw, but you're using BC assessment definitions versus our land use bylaw definitions. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, that was just sort of a confusing question.
Okay.
And then the slide on labor force, can you you had 2,200 in the labor force, and then you listed a whole bunch of about 6 different categories underneath. Are those the 6 largest individual categories?
Are you talking about this slide?
We can't see your slides, Sophie.
You've got to go back to share screen and it gets complicated.
Sure. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Okay, so I believe you're talking about this one, right?
Yeah. So you've got 2,100 is the total labor force for the whole of the island for the 3,600 residents.
Yes.
Yeah. And are the retail trade, the real estate, those people aren't just working on Bowen Island.
Right. Yes.
So, okay, so there's 150 labeled in the retail. The real estate ones, most of them probably are working on Bowen, but the educational services, you know, VIX and IPS wouldn't have that kind of employment in total, and healthcare and social. So a lot of those people are working off island.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking at this, trying to see what you're saying. Okay. I can definitely clarify that in the report. That's a good point.
I think we just had a figure of percentage that are commuters.
Well, that's the commuter ones, but I don't think she's got it broken down by employment category. So, I mean, there's not you know, there's not 255 jobs in healthcare and social assistance on the island, I didn't think. Yeah.
No, I agree. I was just letting
Yeah.
Sophie know.
Yeah, the
that we
next slide
received that
has the
report
commuters on
earlier
it.
today.
Yeah. I don't know how you clarify those actually, because you can't sort, I doubt, the census by worker types.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I do know from talking with business owners that that it does ring true that renters are primarily part of their labor force. So
Oh, yeah.
that's the point that I was trying to make.
Yeah, but if you look at the next slide, I think it's 310 work within the census division. So there's only 310 people that live on Bowen that work on Bowen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? Is that it, Allison?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? I can't see here. Oh, I see Maureen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Sophie. It's Maureen. We met at the committee, and I'm looking forward to reviewing this again with the with the committee. I think Michael and I had our eyes opened on a number of these points when we had an opportunity to discuss them, and you've taken this further, and the report itself is full of interesting ideas to consider and think about whether we should be introducing on Bowen. So thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you so much, Maureen.
Yeah,
You're very
if
welcome.
I can, Gary, through you,
Yeah.
Maureen touched on a point there. When we actually looked at this in the housing committee, I have to tell you, it was a sad meeting, in as much that the figures spoke for themselves, and you looked at it, and then that is our reality. I think it gives some idea of the magnitude of the task in hand, and some of the difficulties we're really going to face. There's a couple of those slides which are real game changers in terms of how you might feel about the situation. So in fact, this has been a very valuable report indeed, and you can't argue with the numbers. We may not like them. They may make difficult reading, but they are what they are.
Yes.
Absolutely. Anybody else? That's it, eh? Yeah, it's fantastic. There's some real insights there, obviously. So a lot of the stuff that we were aware of, but I don't think we were quite as aware of the unavailability for the housing stock on a lot of the young families and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how things are gonna shake down in the future here, but that was one thing. The other thing that surprised me was the amount of elderly that are planned to stay on the island. So they're gonna need accommodation, because there really just isn't anything there if they're trying to downgrade, you know.
Yeah, it's very true.
But anyway, this will be a fantastic base. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Appreciate that. And if anybody has any more questions? All right. Okay, I'm going to read the recommendation. And okay, wait a minute here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. The council will refer the Bowen Island Municipalities Housing Needs Report as attached to the Manager of Planning and Development's report dated March 30th, 2020, to the Housing Advisory Committee for review and comment. I'd also, if nobody minds, I'd like to put that through to the Mayor's Standing Committee on the Community Lands also. Anybody have a problem with that?
No, I'll second that, Gary, that addition
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, David. And if there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. How's that, Hope?
Looks unanimous to me.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I'll let you go if you haven't already gone. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you all. I hope you all have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Thank you,
care.
Sophie.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're gonna move on to the turf field replacement project. Shauna Jennings. Hi, Shauna, if you're still there.
Hi, I'm here. Yeah, good evening.
There you are.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. So yeah, we're here to talk about the turf field replacement project. And I just thought I'd start with a quick project update, just so you know where we're at currently. Myself and Scott Slater from the school district met with the project manager a couple months ago now, just to confirm the scope of work. At that time, we're still on track for tender in May and looking to construction to start July 2nd and completed by September, assuming that we move forward. And as we're headed towards the tender, what we're talking about today is the decision around the type of infill.
You're breaking up,
used
Shauna.
in the replacement. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. Off and on. You're breaking up a little bit.
I've got you.
Okay, might be this city Wi-Fi. Maybe it doesn't work very well here.
Probably not.
So previously discussed, we've talked about 4 infill products: the crumb rubber infill, the TPE, the EPDM, and the organics. And I'll just run through just a really quick review before we start talking about numbers. So the crumb rubber infill is the current industry standard. It's a recycled product. It is reusable in a subsequent field, and it is the most affordable option. There have been some concerns raised in the media regarding perceived health risks, and the infill has a high degree of migration. So that means it carries off the field, usually in people's shoes and socks and on their clothing. TPE and EPDM are, though the 2 of them are similar products, they are made from raw materials, which makes for a higher environmental cost. They do mitigate the public health perception concerns, and they appear to be less migratory, although they are still somewhat migratory. They're also reusable in a subsequent field, but they are more costly. And then the organics, there's no public health concerns there. They are made from organic material. They do have a high degree of decomposition and compaction, which is what we've definitely seen on our current field. A high degree of migration, and they're not recommended anymore for our climate. They are also not reusable in a subsequent field, and increased costs to maintain those types of field, though that is higher than the other 3 options. So Hope, if you could just run back to that cost table. Thank you. So the cost of the infill, you can see here, the construction costs all start, the TPE, EPDM, and the cork, the organics, all are about the same. The rubber crumb is about $40,000 cheaper. Project management costs, of course, are going to remain consistent. Annual infill top up is quite a difference there. So what we have seen definitely with our cork and coconut is that we are spending between $10,000 and $13,000 annually on the actual material to top up the field. So I just went in the middle there with $11,500. The other infills, you don't lose as much infill. It doesn't migrate as much as that cork and coconut husk does. So we are only looking at about a $3,000 annual top up. Maintenance on the crumb rubber, TPE or EPDM is all about the same. You maintain every 4 to 6 weeks. With our current field, we're maintaining 1 to 2 times per week in the heavy use seasons. So you can just see the totals there, the difference coming. If you look at the crumb rubber is the cheapest and the cork and coconut is the most expensive, there's about a $50,000 discrepancy there. That's the total cost plus 1 year of maintenance. So consider those annual maintenance costs are ongoing. BIM has applied for a $20,000 grant from the Tire Stewardship BC to offset costs of the crumb rubber. We don't know, they said April they would be announcing. I haven't heard yet about that. The cork and coconut, not reusable, and it's also not recyclable. So one thing that we did learn when the project manager was on site is that our current organic turf field is not recyclable because of the compaction and the all of the breakdown of the organic material is so embedded in the turf fibers that they won't be able to get it out in order to recycle the product. It's like recycle the field. So one thing that is happening, I'm in conversation with a local business owner who may be interested in using parts of the turf field for his business. So that is one mitigating factor that would keep the field out of the landfill. So we're working on that to see if he can actually use it on his property. And the other just point to make there is that the crumb rubber, this is new information. It is reusable in the next iteration of the field. That is new information to us. TPE and EPDM we always knew was reusable. The city of Delta has done 2 fields where they've reused their crumb rubber. They were able to
Lost, yeah.
pull about 75% of it in. Oh, hello?
We lost you there for a bit when you said the city of Delta was able to reuse.
Okay, so the city of Delta was able to reuse about 75% of their field. And it was, they wash it and filter it and reuse that in a new field.
And that was the crumb rubber?
That was the crumb rubber.
Thank you.
So hope we can take that off the screen so I can see everybody again, if possible. There we go. So I just wanted to also just to acknowledge, I know everybody has probably seen, there's been some letters and some feedback from stakeholders and community members have expressed concern around the crumb rubber infill. Those most common themes are centered around the perceived health risks and the environmental concerns. And just want to make the point that these concerns are valid. There is a lot of information in the media, and there is a lot of information out there.
Hang on, Shauna, you're just cutting out there.
Okay, maybe I'll just move. Hang on.
It also may help, Shauna, if you just turn off your video.
Turn off?
Yeah, it sometimes helps.
If you turn off the video, it sometimes increases the audio.
Yeah.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Much better.
Okay. So yeah, just to say that a lot of municipalities are having these discussions around their turf fields. With regards to the health concerns, the studies are ongoing within the scientific community on effects that crumb rubber has on people's health. It is difficult at this time to find any consensus, and peer-reviewed studies are limited. With regards to the environment, it's safe to say that each of the infill options presents challenges, and it would be difficult to say which is more or less impactful on the environment. It is clear from stakeholders and many community members that we agree that the field is a much used public amenity, acts as a social hub and a place to play and exercise, and that it has reached the end of its lifespan and does need to be replaced. So in conclusion, just to bring it back to the recommendation, just to acknowledge that it is a difficult decision, and I had a hard time making this recommendation. Just the information is complicated. It's not always consistent. It's impacted by further factors such as access to amenities and budget considerations. But after considerable research, conversations with many of my colleagues in the Lower Mainland and who work in recreation and parks departments and cost considerations, I am recommending to go ahead with the rubber crumb infill.
Well, thank you, Shauna. That's very brave.
Thank
so
you.
What are the comments coming from when you have North Van in there and that sort of thing? And what is we're into it for 10 years, eh?
10 to 12 years, yes, and then, but that is the lifespan of any of these fields.
Yeah. And what are your fellow field makers like in West Van or North Van? What is their thought on it?
They're all still using crumb rubber. The city of Vancouver is doing some more studies before they build any more fields.
Mm-hmm.
And who was it? Whistler that was using one of the other kinds?
Yes. Yes, municipality of Whistler uses the TPE and the sand. They just built that in 2018 and they're very happy with their field.
Great, and that's the food grade plastic one, is that right?
Yes.
TPE, okay,
TPE.
Thank you. I know you sent us something earlier with these more described. I just can't put my hands on it at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did we get any money from the football club for this?
No, the football club wasn't able to contribute any money.
Okay.
And the school district is not able to contribute any money either. The school district, they're basically have said that they trust us as a partner to make the best decision.
That's nice of them. Okay, open it up. Allison, I see you there. Go ahead.
First,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, just a couple of questions. We didn't put some sort of underlay, which I used the term from carpet laying, some sort of underfelt or undermat.
Shock pad.
Yeah, we're gonna do that this time?
We are about 10 years ago when we put the first field in, it wasn't necessarily common practice to put in every single field a shock pad, and it is now.
Yeah, okay, and my understanding is that's been part of the problem with the coconut. The problems we've had is we didn't have the proper underpinnings.
That could be. I think it also decomposes and compacts down, but may not have done so as much had the shock pad been there.
Yeah, and where did the cost come from? I mean, it strikes me as really odd that the other three are exactly the same price.
The cost came from RF Binney with it's a Class C estimate from the project manager.
So he didn't go out for tenders from any of these suppliers then?
He hasn't gone out to tender, no, not for our project, but they are one of the leading companies in.
Okay, so have we looked at all to what they do in Seattle and Portland and?
I've been just chatting with people in the Lower Mainland and in Canada. I know that Binney does do work in the States.
I'm not caring about whether Binney does work in the States. I'm wanting to know what Binney's competition's also doing.
I did receive other quotes. One was from Vanderzam, who are here in the Lower Mainland, and their quotes were slightly higher.
But we don't know what best practices they're following down in other areas that have soccer fields except for the Lower Mainland.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess the other thing is we did pass a resolution many years ago to put away all the rent money that the football club paid. So had we done that, there's $173,000 sitting in surplus that belongs to us for the field, correct?
It's 73,000.
73,000. And does that include the 5 that's already there, or should it be, is it 78? Yeah.
I believe it should be, yeah, that it included the 5, so 73 total.
So there is some money that theoretically we should have been putting aside for this.
Yes.
Given having been there back in 2010 and the comments I'm getting from people in the industry, in the soccer industry, not necessarily parents of people here, I'm getting the feeling that there isn't a lot of support in the industry itself for Crumb anymore, and they're going for the other 3, and the preferred is the coconut one. So, and you know, we made a commitment back in the beginning to use more natural products. So if we wanted to not use the coconut, I mean, I'm not sure what reports there are that it doesn't work well. Reported operational difficulties, I'm not sure what that implies or means. So I think we had 300,000 in the budget for it, right?
David.
And 254 and 36 is not quite 300. So, and there's a hefty contingency. So at this point, I'm leaning to the TPE because it's a food grade element, or the coconut, and not the crumb rubber.
One thing that I did chat today with the project manager, if an organic was one of the options, would be to look at the new crushed walnut that is now being used. They're using it in the States. We wouldn't have a local distributor, nor would we have any local examples of that yet. But they are finding that that is working better than the coconut because it doesn't decompose.
Okay.
Okay, I've got David first, then Sue Ellen and Rob.
Okay, well, thanks. This is, I'm my decision keeps going back and forth, just like everybody else's on this, because we have insufficient information. So I was the one back in January who suggested the crumb rubber. I'd read the science at that point, and I could see that there was no real, there was no agreement that there were health issues. So I reread it all again, and I looked at the recommendation that came out of the football club, and it's true that there is no decision, that there's no clarity that there is a danger, but the studies are still ongoing. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency will have its phase 2 report in another year or so. And I guess I'd probably I'm interested that you talk to the other folks in the region, Shauna, but I guess I'd probably recommend now the precautionary principle and go with one of the other 2 plastics. You know, okay, $40,000. It's a one-time cost. We don't have a lot of money right now, but perhaps that's the best thing to do. But I certainly say we have to move forward on this. It's a community center. It's really well used. I'm a huge supporter of this. But I could be convinced otherwise. But right now, I'm going against what I said in January and leaning towards the other 2 products, not the coconut or try some new thing. No. Go for the ones that work and they're costly, that don't require that infill every year.
Okay, thanks, David. Sue Ellen?
Yeah, thank you. I'm being affected by this COVID-19. I'm thinking, as a parent whose youngster, when he was young, played on that field, I'm now thinking about the health aspect more than the cost savings. And hearing about air pollution being something that may exacerbate, make COVID symptoms worse. It's just not that this is a COVID issue, but it's just focused my attention on the air quality side of things. Back in the day when the original field was selected, I remember talking to you, David, in particular, but our son was part of the gymnastics club, and I was one of the parents there trying to repair, sew up those big gymnastics mats that the students would tumble into or vault into, or, you know, generally pile into at great speed and hard wear and tear on the device. So I was interested in I was working with those things and thinking, well, there's nothing organic about this, but what is the air quality part? And I thought, would people really have crumb rubber in a school, or where children could, you know, pile into it from a high height and have what was described in some of the letters? And thanks everybody who's been sending in letters and about the crumbs that get on the socks and into the car and come with them on their clothes, and the smell. And I had this image of Pigpen in my mind with this little cloud around him, if people remember the Peanuts. Anyway, I'm just thinking about, I also am concerned about the long-term impacts of roads just through my environmental work. And tires do wear out. That wear is dust that goes into beside the roads. It's a long-term impact on the environment of roads. And I just, I just can't, right now, I can't bring myself to put more petroleum products into the areas where children are playing. And I'm looking again at I'll bring up the OCP again. And this one is one of the 12 fundamental goals that people on Bowen have agreed on through time, to ensure a healthy community with residents working together to improve the quality of life. Bunch of things in here about environmental health and human health. And so I would go for the TPE that you mentioned Whistler has been using. It's a food grade plastic on sand, and that they're happy with that. Or something else, just not the crumb rubber. And I agree it might cost more, but I think the health side is more important. That's it.
Thanks, Phil. Rob?
Well, you know, I'm quite surprised actually, because a couple of things. First off, I worked for the North End Rec Commission, so I know they use crumb rubber and it's a pretty standard usage, as Shauna pointed out, all across the region. So I don't know why we're reinventing the wheel on this. As far as being petroleum products, ethylene, propylene, diene monomer, and thermoplastic elastomer, I mean, that sounds pretty chemically to me, okay? And here we have a product that's the cheapest. It's recycled. We all talk about recycling. We know most of the recycling goes in the dump. Now here's some actually we can actually use as a municipality and put to good use, and now we're not even going to use it. And then the cost, I mean, you know, $40,000, that's almost a 1% tax increase. I mean, we're talking about keeping taxes low and whatnot, and we're going to spend that extra money now on that. And, you know, the cost of the cork, an extra, you know, $10,000 a year almost. I mean, to me, I'm surprised we're even having to make this decision. I think this is a staff decision, and I trust Shauna did the work, and I know the other Metro Van areas have done the work. So personally, I would have liked to have them make the decision, but for the cost and the environmental impact, I using recycled material versus having to manufacture overseas polyethyl polypropylene or whatever it is, I do not see that being a better environmental way to go. So I'm going to go with the staff recommendation on this one.
All right, anybody else? Input here? So.
Can I just point out one thing? Actually, you guys had said it was a $40,000 decision.
Yeah.
But don't forget about the $20,000 grant for the rubber crumb field.
Oh, so it's 60.
So makes it probably a $60,000 decision.
If it comes through.
If it comes through, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, when I said petrochemical, one of the things I meant was I was looking at some of the different reports that people forwarded to us, and this one is from one of the Vancouver Parks Board reports, and I was thinking more about the lead and the other toxic chemicals that are in the rubber and plastic materials of the crumb rubber turf. I don't like that idea.
Well, unfortunately, there's a debate here from cost to. I don't hear that it's really unhealthy. Nobody seems to have proved that yet, have they, Shauna? I mean, obviously you wouldn't be using it if it wasn't healthy. Shauna, you there?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite catch all of that.
No, I was just saying, if all the other regions are using it, does anybody prove that it's really unhealthy, or is it? We don't know. So what happens if we go in there and a year later they say you got to rip it all out?
Yeah, the studies are inconclusive at this time. They're ongoing. There's no consensus, and they're not peer reviewed. So, yeah, like I said, it's a difficult decision to make. Vancouver Coastal Health at the moment endorses the use of crumb rubber.
And the other ones too?
Yeah.
Sorry?
And the other ones as well?
It is the industry standard at the moment, yes.
Gary?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
This is not my field of expertise.
Oh.
And I have to tell you, I would hate to put everyone in a position where we get more letters on this than we do on Melmore. But can I just ask, obviously the best opinion is divided, which makes it difficult. To ask a baseline question, we have to do this year. Is that an imperative?
Yes. Replacement?
Yes.
Yes. It is starting to be, if we continue playing on it, it could become a hazard for injury and a risk liability.
I mean, the only reason I ask that, Sean, is the possibly vain hope that in 12 months' time, a more definitive opinion might have surfaced where people would say, yes, you know, that is right. Because it's very hard for you to come down one side or the other, and every article you read contradicts the previous ones. This is on a technical subject. This is very, very difficult. Who do you go to for the definitive decision to advise us? We've agreed it's a matter of the good decision, and even it breaks my heart to say this, as opposed to the cost decision. But that is the right way to go. But what is the right decision? Because everyone with good intention, I see all the boxes in front of me, and everybody is saying, I wish I knew 100% that this is the best way to go. And from what I see, we don't. And that's, I guess, why I asked the question, could this wait 12 months? And I ask it in naivety because of the difficulties we're facing now.
Mhm. I know it's difficult. My recommendation has changed up until the last hour that I sent in that report. I was flip-flopping back and forth. So it is difficult to make that decision. I don't know that I can give any more information that is going to enlighten you that you don't already have. We do have 3 bags of infill left that we would have put on in March had the soccer season been going ahead. With COVID-19, it wasn't going ahead, so we did not end up putting it on. You know, that probably buys us about 3 months, assuming that things are back to normal in September. So
Sorry, Allison and then Sue Ellen.
I think Maureen hasn't spoken yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, Maureen, go ahead.
I would prefer to stay with the status quo to replace the coconut or walnut if you pursue that further. From what I've read, I don't recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of you, I don't recall anybody writing to us and saying, I want a rubber crumb.
Correct.
Nobody did that. All sorts of people wrote to us and said, you know, we've used this over a long period. It worked for our family. I didn't have to deal with all sorts of things falling off my kids when they came home and got into our dryer and our washer and so forth. It lasted for 10, 11 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And that was what it was supposed to last when it was put in. And apparently there was supposed to be, or could have been, a mat put underneath that might have extended the life. This time around, there will be a mat being put in. And if it lasts for 10 to 12 years, that sounds pretty good to me. And I realize that there are additional costs for maintenance for this. But to go to Michael's point, sometimes you make good decisions and sometimes you make decisions based on cost. And if you're real lucky, you make a good decision that's cost effective. I think we should make a good decision here and just listen to what we're being told by the people who are writing to us and who are upset by fighting a fight that was fought over 10 years ago and that they don't want to fight again because they're basically happy with what we've got at the moment. So I will not be supporting the resolution as proposed.
Hope, can you hear me? It's Gary.
Yes, I can.
Can you get me back in? I'm looking at, I'm a posted attendee for some reason.
Sorry, I can't quite understand you.
I'm a post attendee. I can't get back in. Or I can just go to the beginning again, I guess.
You're right here. We're staring at you.
Yeah,
You're in. You're in.
I can't see anything here.
You may have just minimized it, Gary.
I don't think so.
Well, we can still see you and hear you.
See you and hear you. So
go down to your toolbar and there should be a little blue icon with the video camera in it.
No, it just says help here. No, I haven't got anything left on my screen. That's a problem.
Well, hit stop video.
Yeah. I could go and start over again.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
I don't know. Can't hurt anything, can it?
Can you see your toolbar?
No, I haven't got it. It's not up.
Oh.
Can
Have you
you
got
see
anything?
Can you see any of us?
No, can't see anything.
Why don't we take a 5-minute break?
That's a good idea.
Just
Okay,
5-minute
well,
break.
I'm back in. I just went to the beginning again.
But I don't know how you get out without hitting leave meeting.
I'm going to take a 5-minute break.
So
See you
am I.
guys at,
While we're here, let's just
Yeah,
unless somebody needs a 5-minute break.
No.
No.
Okay. So let's just vote on this thing. I think everybody knows where they're coming from. So the recommendation.
I had my hand up. I wanted another question.
Okay, go ahead.
Shauna, since Whistler put in a TPE field,
Yes.
do you know how much it cost?
Well, their field was a full-size field. I believe it was close to $2 million.
But that was building the whole field and everything now.
Yes, and light, or no, not lights, sorry, but building the whole field.
Okay, but so you don't know what the price per square foot or whatever it was for the TPE?
No, I don't.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
The
I'll make
pricing,
a motion.
the pricing that I do have in the chart there is for our size field.
Yeah, but I don't know what it's based on. I have no comfort with those numbers because all three of them are the same. And that's just an odd coincidence.
The recommendation, Sue Ellen, did you want to read it?
Yeah, I'll make a motion and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I'll move the first two parts as written, that council receive for information an update on the progress of the turf field replacement project, and that council receive for information an update on staff's research and community feedback regarding turf infill products. And
why don't we stop there and pass those two and then deal with the other one as a separate item?
Well, that's what we're gonna do.
Okay, I move that.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Okay, and then the third one, I would move that council direct staff to proceed with the use of organic infill in the turf field replacement project.
What?
I used the word organic instead of crumb rubber. And then
well, Sue Ellen, just to clarify, you understand that does not include TPE or EPDM.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to putting this out here as an option and thinking it leaves you open to either coconut or walnut.
I'd like to have the original one with crumb rubber.
Yeah, that's what staff recommended, and I'm changing it to see whether there's interest in the rest of council. I don't.
Can I ask a question, and then I might second that motion? Were there any letters, was all the support just for against, well, I know everybody was against crumb, nobody supported the crumb rubber. Was there any support for the TPE such as Whistler has done?
I don't think anybody, I don't think it was all against the crumb rubber. I'm not sure that there was a lot of discernment between the other alternatives.
So could we say organic or TPE? Sue Ellen?
Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to provide clear direction for staff so that they could get moving on it before.
I guess the question would be when you decide then.
I'm sorry?
The question for me would be, when is the decision made between organic or TPE?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could go to tender with both.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of with the so we could get a feel for the real price.
If staff are open to it, I'm fine with the idea of saying organic or TPE.
Now, Rob, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just, if we're going to go with one of these other products, I mean, one of the things that I would like to know, and Raj maybe can chime in on this, is going to, like, especially the organic one, is going to have a significant ongoing operating cost. I'm just looking at it here. probably an extra $14,000 a year. And then there's the initial extra $40,000 and we lose the grant. So, it's nice to say that, but this money has to come from somewhere. I don't know where it's going to come from. I haven't seen that in our budgets, any room for that. So, we need to know where this money is going to be coming from to pay for this as well.
We have been putting money into something called the Capital Asset Replacement and Renewal Fund, and I believe that's where the money's coming from.
So if I can.
Yeah, how much is in there?
Through, well, I was just going to say through the mayor to Councillor to Rob, the operating costs will come through either user fees or taxation, like the ongoing operating costs, and then the replacement costs will come from the reserve, as Councillor Morris had pointed out, from the capital renewal and replacement reserve.
Yeah.
Oh, taxation, Jesus.
More tax.
So that motion has not been seconded yet.
I'll second it.
And does it right now say organic or TPE?
Yeah,
And
Shauna said she'd go for tenders on both.
Yeah.
I didn't hear an amendment to that. It currently just says organic.
I asked Sue Ellen if we could put in TPE and I thought she agreed. So
Yeah,
that's
I
what
do
was
agree. I saw Shauna say we could go to tender on both, and that would give us more distinction on the prices.
I think sorry, you go ahead. I think if that's the route you're going to go, the motion needs to be reworded, because it currently would say that directs staff to proceed with the use of an organic or TPE infill in the turf replacement project. To be more clear, proceed with the tender.
Okay.
With
fine.
the use of an organic or TPE infill, because I think otherwise it's not clear.
That's fine with me. I'm open to that as a friendly amendment.
Although we've also left out EPDM, and that we have no reason to leave that out compared to TPE. It appears to be just as good.
No, I
just
left
have
it out on
Whistler's
purpose. TPE is a food grade product.
Mhm.
And EPDM is not.
Yeah, you're not going to. So you're going to eat it?
And Whistler has used.
And Whistler has used EPDM.
Whistler also has $2 million to put into their
TP. No, I'm looking at Whistler's staff report right now, and they had 4 compliant proposals. They went for tender on all sorts of different options, and the option price ranged from $445,000 to $892,000 for the supply, delivery, and installation of artificial turf, shock pad, and infill. And that's a full-size field. Ours is not even a half-size field, right? And when they deleted the 6 of the 15 were proposed crumb rubber, and when they deleted the crumb rubber, the bottom of range was 471, not 445. So that's not the same difference as we've got in the construction costs that we've been provided with. So that's why I'm saying I've got significant problems with the numbers.
Yeah, but we have no idea where these numbers came from.
So in the pre-design Class C cost estimate that I have from Binny, the turf plus standard infill crumb rubber is $86,000 for our field.
Why have we got a construction cost and 20% contingency of $215,000?
Because that's for the whole project. If you're, it sounds like you're pulling out just the cost for the
supply, delivery, and installation of artificial turf, shock pad, and infill.
Okay, I also have a list of construction, sediment control, disposing existing turf, permeable aggregates, and removal of the permeable aggregates. So
Well, it would be nice to know seen that breakdown, I guess. Anyhow, it doesn't change my mind. I still want to do TPE or the organic.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded.
And would you like costing on the coconut and cork, which is no longer recommended for our region, or the walnut, crushed walnut?
No.
Well, again, I would like to know why it is no longer recommended for our region, because again, I've been told that there's no validity in that statement.
I think it was based on our experience with the compaction of the continual topping up of the field.
But we did not have the shock pad in.
No, we didn't.
And it lasted 10, 12 years.
Yeah,
exactly.
And people want the same thing again.
Yeah.
Okay. So what have we got for that last line now? We gotta put this thing to bed.
The motion as it currently reads would be that council directs staff to proceed to tender, including the use of organic and TPE or TPE infill in the turf field replacement project.
What? Okay. So crumb rubber is definitely out. We don't even want to put it in the.
Not in the motion.
Oh, that's not in the motion right now. We can put it in.
Well,
I mean, if you're gonna go out to tender, you might as well find out what they all are.
well, we don't want crumb rubber.
Well, you don't. I do.
Well, then
You
I
can
guess
defeat
the rest
this
of you
motion.
can defeat the motion.
Okay. So that's first. That's seconded. Moved and seconded. Yeah.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
So opposed is Councillor Kale and Wynan. Is that correct?
Where's Maureen?
Correct.
I can't. Sorry, Michael. We can't hear you.
Are you in opposition, Michael?
Yes, I'm happy to go with the crumb rubber.
Yeah. So is Rob, you're in opposition?
Me too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's Maureen?
Maureen?
Maureen had her hand up.
I supported the motion.
Okay, sorry, I
would
didn't
like
see
to
you.
see it.
So it's five
Thank
in
you,
favor, 2
Shauna.
opposed.
Thank you, Shauna. Sorry, Don.
Thank you.
You can go to bed now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shauna.
Thanks, Shauna.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, Shauna.
Okay, so we're going down to reports of committees, cows, commissions, draft minutes and recommendation for the Community Grants Advisory Committee held April 3rd, 2020. Councillor Kale.
Okay, the meeting took place.
Oh, we just lost you.
There we go. Sorry, the meeting took place, and basically the concern amongst the group, this is a very well-intentioned and cooperative group, was that the motion should read that they would proceed with the community grants process, prioritization of COVID-19 related applications unless otherwise directed by council, and the timing of the granting process be discussed subsequent to the budget approval. So at the time we had the meeting, truthfully, the budget wasn't approved, and I think the proposals put forward with the best intentions of getting it done after budget approval, and then they have a good process to review those applications. I can't think of anything less controversial, unless someone wanted to take, and Raj would have to tell me, I think it's in the region of between $40,000 and $50,000.
41.
That we were going to reduce that amount. That would have been one option. Or we were talking as well, I won't say there's any confusion, but people are very aware about what the Bowen Foundation is doing. So make sure that we don't get groups of people working in parallel tracks. So we may need to sort of have some discussions to make sure we've got everybody on the same page, but not to make a big issue of it. It's basically, they're going to, if this is approved, they will come forward. They have a process. Staff have been very helpful in setting out a simple, easy to work process. They seem a very non-bureaucratic a sensible group with concerns for the not-for-profit societies which normally benefit from this grant.
That's
So
correct.
if and they said Parliament, but if the council is satisfied with that proposal, then we can be guided accordingly. And I'm not sure whether it needs a motion to do that. But if it does, then the motion would be on the lines of the proposal.
Let's just give them the motion anyway. That the Community Grants Advisory Committee resolve to proceed with the community grants granting process with the prioritization of COVID-19 pandemic-related applications unless otherwise directed by council. So would that be, does that sound right? There's something wrong there, Hope.
Yeah, that's just the recommendation from the committee. So it would read something like that, the council would direct the Community Grants Advisory Committee, or that council proceed with the community granting process with the prioritization of COVID-19 pandemic related applications, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the timing of the 2020 granting
Why
process.
don't you say that that council agrees that the Community Grants Advisory Committee should proceed with the community grants granting process with the prioritization of COVID-19 pandemic related applications, period.
That council agrees that.
With the prioritization, yeah.
That would, if ever that is agreeable generally, that certainly would be an amendment I'd accept.
And that the timing of the 2020 granting process be discussed subsequent to 2024 budget.
The budget was just approved, so that's sort of redundant at this point.
Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Okay, there's a second on that.
Hang on, I can't see you. Oops.
Okay, Sue Ellen. Yeah.
Thanks, Sue Ellen.
Any further discussion? What would be a COVID prioritization? Any idea? Michael?
It says COVID-19 pandemic related applications.
Yeah, it's
Maybe they won't get any, but if they get 15 applications, 10 of them are COVID related, then they prioritize those 10.
No, I think it's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, that was the intention. Thank you.
Ask a question, all in favor?
Aye.
Rob, you in?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're down to new business. Metro Vancouver Director David Hawking, update the council.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I'm just going to say one thing, which relates to maybe the decision we just made. At the last Climate Action Committee meeting, and this came up at the board as well, there was a presentation by a scientist, UBC scientist called Michael Brower, and it was about, the issue was around wood burning and about wood smoke. And the concern, the rather astonishing information he gave is about how air pollution weakens your immune response, and not just to do with lung issues or bronchial issues, but all kinds of issues. There's all kinds of data that shows that. And I was a bit surprised because obviously it would be bronchial issues. And I asked him to explain, and he did. And so the concern they were raising was around both the burning bylaws, that's why the province has ditched that, and also the forest fire season, if we have a bad forest fire season, and relationship with COVID-19. So it kind of speaks also to what Sue Ellen was saying, is the emissions from, even tiny emissions from a soccer field, if we've got that rubber crumb, it maybe could have some impact. So it sort of perhaps adds to that. So that's all I have to say for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Islands Trust Municipal Trustee Fasten Hale, update to Council on Island Trust business.
Well, I'll just take the lead on that if that's okay. I mentioned the COVID-19 related budget changes that Islands Trust is in the process of probably making as well. So we'll know the details of that shortly. I wanted to mention 12.5 in your agenda has a few items from the Islands Trust. One of them is the decision highlights from that meeting in Salt Spring in the middle of March. That seems like a year ago already with the COVID-19. It was the last time I was in a room with a big group of people, except for the ferry on the ride home. So in that report, you'll see things. I'm happy to answer any questions there. And we did Anyway, and then there was the news release that the Islands Trust put out about visitors, please stay home, about a week and a bit ago. That was before we no, that was 2 weeks ago. That was before we considered would we create a local state of emergency, as we discussed that at an earlier online council meeting. And Islands Trust also has a COVID-19 website update. And I thought members might be interested that every island is doing similar things as Bowen is. Luckily, we have an emergency operations center to do it through. Most of them are doing it as ad hoc community groups through their local fire department, or with the help of the regional district, or not. Salt Spring, being bigger than us, has hospital, and they're having quite a challenge because they don't have a EOC like we do, an emergency operations program. Anyway, lots of creative ideas out there though on the other islands, and let me know if you have any questions, or Michael's getting all the email too, I think.
Okay, thanks, Joel. So Councillor Nicholson, update to council on Metro Vancouver Regional Parks.
Could I, Gary, sorry, could I just add on Island Trust?
Sure.
Just to say that, as you know, you were there, we had meetings in Nanaimo, what seems a long time ago, on the subject of the requisition. And what I'm going to do is that their CAO, Russ Huttonspiller, did say that he was going to drop us a line on reasons for Bowen to be in the trust, which I said I would faithfully circulate. So
Okay.
I have not received that. And Raj, you were there as well. I haven't received it yet. So I am just going to drop him a note to sort of say, please, can we have it? Because whilst it's good news to know that the requisition has been reduced by whatever it is, it will still be in the region of around $300,000. So I will just write to him and say, Russ, following our meeting, please can I have that letter that you assured us you would send? So that's one outstanding item I'm going to follow up.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. And Maureen, over to you.
Parks met on April Fool's Day, and we didn't have a very long agenda. It was obviously by Zoom. A bit of an update on capital expenditures in the last calendar year, and a report on forest health in the regional parks that is worth looking at. They're going to be doing a targeted review of a number of the parks where there appear to be issues with the health of the forest. Crippen is not one of them, but it might be worth looking at, Sue Ellen and Dave in particular. What sort of took up a lot of the conversation, sort of all through the discussion, were issues about park access. And in particular, the mayor of Delta was concerned because he has a large population and small parks. And subsequent to the meeting, a couple of parks in his community were closed. So lots of comparison about people's experience, whether physical distancing was being observed, what could be done at a local level, what was being done on a local level and could be shared. And one of the things that has happened in the last week or so is that they have given a much higher profile to parks on the Metro Vancouver website. Would it be possible for you to just bring up the homepage for Metro Van?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bear with me.
Yeah. So I guess it was a week or so ago, Dennis, you had a conversation with the folks at Parks. And I think that was I think there were a lot of conversations going on around that time as well, just because people were getting worried about what was going on in the parks, and they were also worried about losing the use of the parks. So this is the homepage. It has never been yellow before. And it's all focused on COVID-19 and the status of the different parks in the region. So much higher distance, much higher profile. And down at the bottom of the screen, there's just a help keep parks open slogan, I guess it is. And then when you go through, there's a lot more information about how people can make that happen. So they are doing their best to keep as many parks open as possible because they recognize their importance in getting out into nature and releasing some stress and having a breath of fresh air. So that's all I have to say for Metro Parks.
Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
TransLink Mayor's Council.
Well, we have not had any open meetings since the one in February. So the last one, we had a closed meeting via Zoom on the 2nd of April. So I'll talk a little bit more in the closed meeting about that. You all, anybody on the news would have seen the press and coverage and Jonathan Cote speaking.
Yeah.
The revenue stream has dried up. Cars aren't going downtown, so they're not parking in parking lots, so there's no parking tax. Cars aren't driving, so they're not buying gas, so there's no gas tax. People aren't traveling on West Coast Express or SkyTrain or going to work, so the revenue sources are disappearing, and TransLink has been deemed an essential service. But if the province and the feds don't kick in, there's going to be a lot of service cuts in order to keep something going, and that's going to be a hard decision.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a whole new.
That's a TransLink board decision.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Allison. So
Gary, can I just jump in here really quick? I'm sorry that I missed this earlier, but we actually missed an item. The kiosk report that Daniel put together is still to be dealt with. So Daniel, you can speak to that.
Where is it?
Number is this?
It was on the on-table agenda package.
Oh.
It was supposed to be item 7.3. I apologize.
Sorry,
I was too interested in what else was going on.
Oh, that was Murray. Daniel, you still here?
He is. He reminded me.
Oh, who's got the music playing?
It was Murray Atherton. I've just muted him.
Ah.
And you know what? Sorry, there's actually one other item. A memorandum of understanding for the Bowen Island Community Foundation.
How did we miss that one?
It's been a really busy meeting.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
It's okay. There's tons of table items, lots and lots of letters, and we're sort of playing a bit of catch up with some shorter meetings that we had when we were starting.
Okay, let's just get on with it.
Yeah. Okay, let's.
What are we doing? Daniel's up first.
Do we have Daniel available?
Yep, he's here.
Kiosk. Okay.
So thank you, Mayor. So this is an application we received for a collaborative project from the Eagle Cliff Community Association, and their application is to rebuild, replace an existing sheltered bulletin board structure and assembly structure on the Eagle Cliff Road allowance. But we flagged it because it's something that came up through the work of our NERP programs organizations, and so ECA has brought their application forward for the Eagle Cliff area, but we know that other community, other neighborhood groups are planning similar projects throughout the island. So the idea being to build bulletin board structures. The ECA one is more sort of an ambitious structure that has a bench area and some sheltered storage in it that they view as for like emergency equipment storage, but other organizations are looking at more simple bulletin board structures, but it's something we've heard coming from a number of organizations. So what I've put together in the report just quickly is an overview of our collaborative projects policy. and how that relates to this one, what the ECA proposal is, and what would go into a collaborative project service agreement. So these are agreements we've done for other projects, such as the disc golf project. I'm trying to think of the example I have, but like the disc golf project, something where an organization will be building an asset that the municipality will take ownership of and will be on municipal property.
Yeah, okay.
So the agreement breaks down what the different roles are for the various organizations and what the long-term, who's responsible for maintenance and liability and all those pieces. And so what I'm looking for in this meeting is council direction to direct staff to develop the collaborative project service agreement with the Eagle Cliff Community Association that council would then approve the finalized agreement, but also direction to start to prepare similar agreements with other neighborhood organizations that come forward. So we're sort of assuming on maybe 3 or 4 different applications throughout the island for these bulletin board structures, so that people can use it as a information sharing place for their neighborhoods, especially for people who aren't on the internet as much.
Okay, what do we do? What do you need to get it started? You got a recommendation?
Yeah, so the recommendation is that council direct staff to prepare a collaborative project services agreement with the Eagle Cliff Community Association for the proposed information and assembly sheltered kiosk. That council direct staff to submit any development applications for the proposed information and sheltered kiosk. So that's thinking about us as landowners applying for a building permit and for a development permit for the project. And the council direct staff to prepare collaborative project services agreements with neighborhood organizations for similar projects.
I'll move that.
I'll second it. And just given everything that went on with the water committees, water areas last summer, and the complaints about there was no central place to post things that people would automatically easily see, I thoroughly support this kind of thing.
Yeah, here. I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone.
Is that it?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, now the other one. I'll come down
So
there.
the revised memorandum of understanding was included in the on-table package. Raj would probably be best to speak to that, as he met with Holly Graff from the foundation. Raj, are you?
Hey.
There you are.
Yeah, thank you, Hope. So last Monday, you had reviewed the draft proposal for an MOU from Bowen Island Community Foundations, and essentially council had approved it in principle. So Jen McGowan, our emergency management coordinator, and I had a few concerns with that draft MOU. It basically had it had a lot of administrative effort required with it due to the formal granting language that had been used to prepare it. So we met with Holly Graff on Tuesday and let her know that in an emergency situation, we'd be running pretty thin on administrative staff and the procedures we would normally follow in a grant intake process. And while we recognize a need for controls and reporting and accountability, we need the process and decision-making process to be streamlined and nimble. So primarily, we had requested changes to a few points that related to our ability to engage other organizations. So we had one of the points of reference change to say that we could receive expenditure grant requests from on-island charitable organizations, businesses, or individuals who have an interest and capability to resolve problems in one of the 3 priority areas that they had outlined. And we'd also just basically confirmed that the approval process would be nimble, and we didn't want the perception out there that this was another grant intake process similar to the our normal grant intake process for small community grants that we have. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I hope you guys have had a chance to read through the memorandum of understanding. Both Jen McGowan and myself were happy with the revised memorandum of understanding, and the Bowen Island Community Foundation incorporated all of our recommendations to make those revisions.
Okay.
So I'll just turn it over for any questions that you may have.
Allison?
Am I on?
Yeah.
So Raj, in the very first line of the paragraph under purpose, it still says charitable organizations.
So they could be awarding to other charitable
Oh,
organizations
other
other
than
than the municipality.
charitable.
Yes, pardon?
Why doesn't it just say organizations?
Because they can only provide grant funds to a charitable organization. We in turn can provide to somebody else. So if you go to page
I saw that. It's just I still don't. The
So the
purpose of
third-
the fund is to provide operating grants, charitable organizations.
So we would be the charitable organization they provide a grant to, and then
Well, yeah, except and our mandate is to provide the availability of food, hygiene, and everything else.
those are one of the 3 areas that they're making this funding available.
We're the charitable organization on Bowen Island that serves our residents, and we, Bowen Island Municipality, has the mandate to address the following priority or areas.
Sorry?
What's your point?
It doesn't.
What was your point, Allison? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Well, Bowen Island's mandate is not to provide the availability of food, hygiene, or other basic needs. The provision of relevant information is fine, and the mobilization of citizens, but
Yes. So that is the mandate of the fund, and that's what they're making the funding available for.
well, then it says. The
And
purpose
then
of the fund-
if you, Councillor Morris.
I've read that one. I'm not unhappy with that one. It says the purpose of the funds is to provide operating grants to charitable organizations. So if you're telling me it says the purpose of the fund is to provide flexible operating grants to Bowen Island Municipality. And it has the mandate to address the following areas anyhow. And are you sure we want to do all the things that are under Bowen Island Municipality will? Develop an operational procedure protocol and develop a process for identifying and approving expenditures? Is there no way we can just use the Community Grants Committee to do all this?
Most of those processes have already been developed. We would be using the same processes that we use in the EOC which was part of the discussion. So we wouldn't be developing brand new processes. And we want this to be, as I mentioned earlier, this is a fund that's available in the event of emergency. So you want it to be readily available and you want to be able to readily disperse funds. So jointly with them, we would be able to do that.
Okay, well, I'm happy if you're happy and you want to spend the time, and I don't want to hear that it took too much time.
It's also intended to be temporary. Keep that in mind.
It's only here for the COVID-19 operation.
I don't have it in front of me. I'm just wondering what the recommendation is.
Oh, Hope has
not one attached to it. I've drafted something.
Oh, thank you.
But I'm not sure. I'm getting tired.
So the recommendation, I believe, was going to be to approve the proposed memorandum of understanding between.
Yeah, so I'll just read what I have, Raj, and we can go from there. So that council approved the memorandum of understanding included in the April 14th regular council meeting agenda and direct staff to administer the distribution of funds for the Bowen Island Community Foundation's Resilience Fund as per the memorandum of understanding. Something like that.
Did it say
I'll
in
move that.
the case of a, okay.
The memorandum says.
I'll move that.
That was Rob and Maureen.
Yeah.
I do have some further comments. The first one is I would really like to thank the Bowen Island Community Foundation for taking the initiative to pull this together and to do the work to try to fundraise $100,000 to help our community in difficulties. The second point goes to Councillor Morris's concern around the language in that section that reads the purpose of the fund. And Raj, I'd just like you to consider just a small change in the wording, and I'm sure that this is not an issue for the Community Foundation, but it would, I think, satisfy Councillor Morris. So the purpose of the fund is to provide flexible operating grants to charitable organizations on Bowen Island that serve our residents, period. the mandate of the fund is to address the following priority areas.
Like that, thank you.
Yeah, so it clarifies.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it, I think that the intent on the part of both parties is to make this as simple and as responsive as possible. So I'm sure that any kind of bureaucratic unnecessary obstacles will be set aside, given that it's intended to be something that operates cooperatively, quickly in an emergency.
Yes.
I support Maureen's wording change. I had a little trouble with that same paragraph as well, but that clarifies the meaning.
Okay, I'll ask a question. All in favor?
Aye.
Can we
Aye.
put as amended in there?
Memorandum of understand. Thank you, Allison.
Perfect. Well done, group. Thank you. Okay, is that it for Hope from your side?
You're in luck. Just a
Yeah.
motion to move to a close, please.
That the recommendation is a council.
So that council moved to a closed council meeting immediately following the regular council meeting to discuss items pursuant to sections 91K of the community charter, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Thank you. Just a quick question before we get into this closed meeting. For those that are catching the ferry, what time is your?
We're all, nobody's catching a ferry.
Oh, well, no, we have people catching ferries. Is Dennis still here? Raj?
No,
Everyone's
Gary's
at home. Everyone's at home, Gary.
I caught an earlier ferry home just to get home in time for the meeting.
The background does not look like his office.
No, it doesn't. You're absolutely right. Okay, so.
So just
closed council meeting.
Period.
Motion to adjourn.
No question period.
Approval of the, okay, question period. All right.
Did we move and?
No.
Oh, we didn't vote on the closed meeting notice.
Yeah.
I took it by consensus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't hear any opposition.
No.
And Robin says she has no questions.
Oh, good. Good night.
Pretty good.
Thank you, Bronwyn.
We all sign off and sign in again, correct?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Leave the meeting and then join the other one.
Yes, please.
Join the other one. Night, Murray.
Thank you.